Hello guys, welcome to Monkey DFIC. So in this video, we will see what if Luffy had all Admiral powers. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1, Sea of Flames and Ice. The sky ripped open above the Thousand Sunny. Not like normal clouds parting, this was different. The air itself seemed to tear, revealing something cosmic and terrifying behind the blue. The Straw Hat crew stood frozen on deck as strange lights pulsed through the breach, casting impossible shadows across the ship. What the hell is that? Zoro gripped his swords, ready for whatever might come through. Nami's eyes widened as her log pose went haywire, the needle spinning uncontrollably. It's affecting the magnetic field. I've never seen anything like it. Luffy, being Luffy, stared up at the cosmic disturbance with stars in his eyes. So cool. Hey, mystery hole. Whatcha got in there? Luffy, don't, Robin started, but it was too late. The captain had already stretched his arm toward the rift, fingers extending into the swirling vortex of colors that defied description. I just want to touch it. The moment his fingers breached the edge, 5 distinct beams of light, red, blue, yellow, purple, and green, shot down through his stretched arm and into his body. Luffy's back arched as energy coursed through him, his eyes glowing with the same 5 colors. Luffy! The crew screamed in unison as their captain was lifted off the deck, suspended in the air by the strange energy. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the rift sealed itself. Luffy dropped to the deck with a heavy thud, completely unconscious. Chopper rushed to his side, medical bag already open. His pulse is erratic. Temperature unstable. Everyone back up, give him air. The crew formed a concerned circle around their fallen captain as Chopper worked frantically to stabilize him. For hours, Luffy remained unconscious, his body occasionally twitching or glowing faintly with one of the 5 colors. Night fell. Most of the crew had reluctantly gone to bed at Chopper's insistence that they rest in shifts. Only Zoro remained awake, sitting cross-legged beside his captain in the infirmary, one eye open and vigilant. That's when Luffy's eyes snapped open. Meet, he said simply, sitting up like nothing had happened. Zoro nearly fell over. You serious? That's the first thing you say after all that? Luffy grinned, patting his stomach. I'm hungry. Fighting cosmic stuff takes a lot out of you. You weren't fighting anything, you idiot. You stuck your hand where it didn't belong and got zapped. Zoro's gruff tone couldn't hide his relief. How do you feel? Weird. Luffy tilted his head, looking at his hands. Like I'm full of stuff. Different stuff. He swung his legs off the bed. But mostly hungry. Zoro sighed. I'll wake Sanji. By morning, the entire crew had gathered in the galley, watching in amazement as Luffy devoured twice his usual impossible amount of food. His appetite had somehow grown even more monstrous. Physically, he seems fine, Chopper reported, reviewing his notes. Better than fine, actually. His vitals are perfect, and his recovery rate is off the charts. That rift was no natural phenomenon, Robin mused. The energy signatures reminded me of ancient texts describing the convergence of powers, a theoretical cosmic event where fundamental forces align. Usopp gulped. And Luffy stuck his hand in it. Of course he did. I feel awesome. Luffy declared through a mouthful of food. Like I could beat up 100 bad guys at once. He reached for another plate but knocked over his water glass instead. That's when it happened. As the water spilled toward Luffy's lap, his hand shot out instinctively. Instead of water hitting his pants, it froze solid in midair. A perfect ice sculpture of a splash hung suspended above his lap. The entire crew fell silent. Did you just? Nami pointed at the ice, her voice barely above a whisper. Luffy looked as shocked as everyone else. I didn't mean to. I just didn't want to get wet and then, bam. Ice. He poked the frozen water with his finger. That's so cool. That's Akiji's power, Robin said, her normally composed face showing rare alarm. The ice fruit. But that's impossible, Frankie argued. You can't have two devil fruit powers. And Luffy already has the gum fruit. To demonstrate, Luffy stretched his cheek far beyond normal human limits. See? Still rubber. Try something else, Zoro suggested, his expression grave. Think about a different power. Luffy scrunched up his face in concentration. He held out his hand, palm up, and stared at it intensely. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, without warning, his entire arm transformed into flowing magma, radiating intense heat that immediately sent everyone scrambling backward. Hot hot hot. Luffy shouted, flailing his magma arm. The movement sent globules of molten rock flying across the galley. My kitchen. Sanji yelled as a chunk of magma hit the wall, instantly igniting the wooden paneling. Brook grabbed a bucket of water and threw it at the fire, only for the water to evaporate on contact. Yo-ho-ho. This is rather alarming. Luffy, change it back. Nami screamed, dodging another flying piece of molten rock. I don't know how. Luffy's panic only made things worse. His magma arm swelled, growing hotter and more unstable. Help. Zoro, never one to hesitate, drew his swords and plunged them into the deck at Luffy's feet. Stand still. Focus on your rubber power. Remember who you are. Something in Zoro's commanding tone cut through Luffy's panic. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and concentrated. Slowly, the magma cooled and transformed back into his normal rubber arm. The galley fell silent again, save for the crackling of smaller fires and the heavy breathing of the crew. That was Akainu's power, Robin said, her voice steady despite the chaos. The magma fruit. Nami pushed past her shock to take control of the situation. Frankie, Brook, put out these fires. Sanji, salvage what food you can. Chopper, check everyone for burns. She turned to Robin. We need answers. What happened to him? While the crew carried out her instructions, Luffy sat on the deck, staring at his hands with an uncharacteristically serious expression. I felt them. All of them. Different powers, fighting inside me. What else? Robin asked gently. Luffy closed his eyes. Light. Gravity. And something else, like life. Or plants. Kizaru. Fujitora. Ryakujiu, Robin listed. All Admiral powers. This is bad, Nami said, pacing. Really bad. One Admiral power would put an even bigger target on our backs. But all of them. The Marines will hunt us to the ends of the earth. Let them try, Zoro said, resheathing his swords. We've faced impossible odds before. Luffy stood up, wobbling slightly. I need to learn to control this. I don't want to hurt any of you guys. Perhaps we should find somewhere isolated to practice, Brook suggested. An uninhabited island, perhaps. Good idea, Nami agreed. I'll check my charts. Before she could move toward her navigation room, Luffy's eyes suddenly flashed yellow. In less than a heartbeat, he vanished from where he stood, reappearing at the ship's bow in a flash of light. Whoa! Luffy's voice called from the distance. I moved super fast. Kizaru's light speed, Robin explained to the others, who stood dumbfounded. Another flash, and Luffy was back among them. This is amazing. I wonder what else I can. He raised his hand slightly, and instantly everyone except Luffy crashed to the deck, pinned by an invisible force. What the? Zoro growled, struggling against the sudden pressure. Gravity, Robin gasped, barely able to speak under the crushing weight. Fujitori's power. Oops! Luffy exclaimed, and the pressure immediately vanished. Sorry. I didn't mean to. The crew slowly picked themselves up, exchanging worried glances. We need to get a handle on this. Before he accidentally sinks the ship, Nami said, rubbing her shoulder where she'd hit the deck hard. Or worse, Sanji added, lighting a cigarette with slightly trembling hands. Luffy looked crestfallen. I hurt you guys. You didn't mean to, Chopper assured him, already checking Nami for injuries. But I did it anyway. Luffy's voice hardened with determination. Nami, find us that island. I need to figure this out before I really hurt someone. For once, no one argued with the captain. The gravity incident had made one thing clear: Luffy's new powers were as dangerous as they were incredible, and he had absolutely no control over them. 3 days later, the Thousand Sunny dropped anchor near a small, uninhabited island in a remote corner of the Grand Line. The landscape was perfect for their needs, one half rocky and barren, the other covered in dense forest, with a freshwater spring at the center. Alright, we'll set up camp here, Nami directed, pointing to a natural clearing near the beach. Luffy, you and Zoro head to the rocky area for practice. It's far enough that if things get explosive, we should be safe. And try not to melt the entire island, Sanji added as he began unloading supplies. We need somewhere to sleep tonight. Luffy nodded solemnly. The past 3 days had been tense. Though he tried to suppress his new abilities, they kept manifesting in unpredictable ways, freezing the shower water solid, leaving footprints of sprouting plants, accidentally phasing through the floor when his body turned to light during a nap. Each incident had frayed nerves further. Come on, Zoro said, leading Luffy away from the others. Let's see what you can really do. Once they reached the rocky outcropping far from camp, Zoro turned to face his captain. Alright. Let's start with the basics. Try to activate each power deliberately, one at a time. Luffy nodded, focusing on his right hand. Ice first. That seemed least dangerous. He concentrated, imagining the cold feeling he'd experienced when freezing the water glass. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, frost began to form on his fingertips, spreading rapidly up his arm until his entire limb was transformed into gleaming ice. I did it. Luffy grinned, holding up his frozen arm. And I'm still in control. Good. Now try to use it, aim for that boulder. Luffy pointed his ice arm at the indicated rock and concentrated again. A blast of freezing energy shot forth, instantly encasing the boulder in a thick layer of ice that crackled as it formed. That's Akiji's Ice Age attack, Zoro observed, impressed despite himself. You've got the same level of power he did. It feels natural, Luffy said, examining his ice arm with wonder. Like my rubber powers, just different. Try changing to a different power. Luffy focused again, this time thinking of light and speed. His ice arm glowed briefly before transforming into pure light, brilliant and almost transparent. This one's harder to hold, Luffy said through gritted teeth. It wants to move. Then move, Zoro suggested. Use Kizaru's speed. Luffy nodded, then vanished in a flash of yellow light. He reappeared atop a distant cliff, then zipped back, circled Zoro 10 times in less than a second, and finally stopped, breathing hard but grinning. So fast. I could see everything, but it was like the world was standing still. Zoro nodded, barely able to track Luffy's movements. Try gravity next, but be careful. Don't crush anything, or anyone. Luffy's light arm shifted again, returning to normal before taking on a subtle purple glow. He pointed at a small rock, concentrating, and the stone suddenly shot upward, then crashed down with such force that it shattered into dust. Oops. Too much pressure. You need finer control, Zoro observed. Try lifting something without breaking it. For the next hour, they worked through each power methodically. Luffy demonstrated Akainu's magma, carefully melting a boulder rather than exploding it. He showed Ryakuji's life-draining ability by withering a small patch of grass, then immediately rejuvenating it. "I think I'm getting the hang of this," Luffy said, returning his arm to normal rubber. "Each power feels different, but they all respond to my will." "The problem isn't using one at a time," Zoro pointed out. "It's when they start mixing or activating without you meaning them to." "Yeah." Luffy frowned. "It's like they're fighting for control sometimes, especially when I get excited or scared." "Then we need to test that." Zoro drew his swords. "Fight me." Luffy's eyes widened. "But what if I hurt you?" Zoro grinned wolfishly. "You won't. And if you lose control, I'll knock some sense into you." That was all the permission Luffy needed. With a characteristic laugh, he launched himself at his first mate. What started as a controlled sparring match quickly escalated. Every time Luffy's emotions spiked, excitement at landing a hit, frustration at missing, his powers would fluctuate. Ice would unexpectedly give way to magma, rubber would shift to light. Each transition caused a dangerous surge of uncontrolled energy. "You're switching too frequently," Zoro shouted, dodging a wild burst of mixed ice and magma that left a bizarre, steaming crater in the ground. "Focus on one power." "I'm trying." Luffy's arm elongated like rubber, but halfway through the stretch, it transformed into light, shooting past Zoro as a laser beam that carved a trench into the cliff face behind him. The sound of the rockfall startled Luffy, breaking his concentration entirely. Suddenly, all 5 powers activated simultaneously. His body became a chaotic maelstrom of elemental forces, right arm magma, left arm ice, torso phasing between light and solidity, gravity warping around him, plants sprouting and dying at his feet. "Luffy!" Zoro shouted, but his voice couldn't penetrate. The swirling energies now surrounding his captain. The power surge grew, rocking the entire island. Back at camp, the rest of the crew looked up in alarm as a column of multicolored light erupted from the rocky area. "That doesn't look good," Usopp gulped. "Everyone move. Now." Nami ordered, already grabbing essential supplies. They barely made it to the Sunny when the shockwave hit, a pulse of combined Admiral powers that flattened trees, boiled the freshwater spring, and sent rocks flying in all directions. From the ship's deck, they watched in horror as the island's geography transformed before their eyes. Half of it was now encased in ice, while the other half smoldered with magma flows. The center had been completely flattened by gravity, and weird, twisted plants grew at impossible speeds around the edges before withering just as quickly. "Where are Luffy and Zoro?" Chopper cried, scanning the devastation with his binoculars. As if in answer, a flash of light streaked toward the ship, resolving into Luffy carrying an unconscious Zoro over his shoulder. He landed on the deck, looking terrified. "I couldn't control it. We have to help Zoro." Chopper immediately went into doctor mode, directing Luffy to lay Zoro down while he began examining him. "What happened?" Nami demanded. "Everything went crazy," Luffy said, his voice shaking. "All the powers came out at once. Zoro tried to stop me and I think I hit him with something. I don't even know what." Chopper looked up from his examination. "Burns, frostbite and crushing injuries, all at once. It's like he was hit by all the powers simultaneously. Will he be okay?" Luffy asked, his usual confidence nowhere to be found. "I'll do everything I can," Chopper promised, already beginning treatment. "But we need to get him to a proper medical facility. These injuries are beyond what I can fully treat on the ship." The gravity of the situation settled over the crew. Their strongest fighter besides Luffy was down, and the island they'd chosen for safe practice was now uninhabitable. "This is worse than we thought," Robin said, watching the island continue to transform through competing elemental forces. "The powers aren't just strong, they're growing stronger. And I can't control them," Luffy said, staring at his hands. Not when they all want to come out at once. We need help, Nami decided. Professional help, from someone who understands devil fruits better than we do. What about Vegapunk? Frankie suggested. The scientist who knows everything about devil fruits. Too dangerous, Robin countered. If the world government gets their hands on Luffy with these powers. Then who? Usopp asked, the panic evident in his voice. Who else knows enough about devil fruits to help? A moment of thoughtful silence fell over the crew, broken only by the distant sounds of the island tearing itself apart. Trafalgar Law, Sanji said finally. He's a devil fruit expert, a doctor, and most importantly, he owes us. Plus, he's not the type to sell us out to the Marines. Nami nodded. Last we heard, he was operating in the North Blue. It's a journey, but it's our best shot. Then that's where we're headed, Luffy said, his voice regaining some of its usual determination. He looked at Zoro's unconscious form. I'm not letting this happen to anyone else. I'll learn to control these powers, whatever it takes. As the Thousand Sunnies set sail away from the devastated island, none of them noticed the marine reconnaissance vessel hiding behind a distant atoll, its long-range Den Mushi already transmitting everything they'd witnessed back to headquarters. Fleet Admiral Sakazuki slammed his fist on the table, the wood smoldering under his magma-infused knuckles. Repeat that report, he demanded. The nervous communications officer swallowed hard. Sir, reconnaissance vessel Delta 7 reports witnessing Straw Hat Luffy display multiple devil fruit powers. Specifically, powers resembling those of yourself, Admiral Kizaru, former Admiral Kazan, Admiral Fujitora, and Admiral Ryukyu. The gathered marine leaders exchanged shocked glances. Impossible, Admiral Kizaru drawled, though his usually lazy expression had sharpened with interest. One human body can't contain multiple devil fruits without being destroyed. The report is quite detailed, sir, the officer continued. They captured visual Den Mushi footage of Straw Hat transforming parts of his body into magma, ice, and light, as well as manipulating gravity and life force. The resulting power surge rendered an entire island uninhabitable. Admiral Fujitora, despite his blindness, seemed to stare directly at Sakazuki. If this is true, we are facing a threat unprecedented in marine history. More importantly, interjected the newly promoted Admiral Ryukyu, how did he obtain these powers? Mine is still very much with me. As is mine, Fujitora added. Kizaru lazily raised his hand, which glowed with light. Same here. All eyes turned to Sakazuki, who demonstrated his own magma abilities with a molten fist. Clearly, he hasn't stolen our devil fruits. This is something else entirely. The report mentions a strange cosmic disturbance, the officer offered. A rift in the sky that emitted 5 distinct colored lights that entered Straw Hat's body. Some new natural phenomenon. Fujitora mused. Or perhaps the will of the world itself, Sakazuki finished, his expression darkening. The report also mentioned Straw Hat's crew discussing seeking help from Trafalgar Law in the North Blue. He stood, his massive frame dominating the room. This changes everything. Straw Hat Luffy has always been a significant threat, but now he represents a power imbalance that could destroy the world order. We must capture or eliminate him immediately. Sir, Kizaru drawled, if he truly possesses all our powers combined, along with his own, is direct confrontation wise? Sakazuki's expression was grim. We have no choice. Assemble the Buster Call fleet. All available vice admirals are to report for duty. And contact CP-0, will need their specialized agents as well. As the room erupted into activity, Fujitora remained seated, his blind eyes fixed on nothing. You seem troubled, Isho, Ryukyu noted. I am, Fujitora admitted quietly. I sense that hunting Straw Hat now will lead to destruction beyond imagination. These powers, they were given to him for a reason. Perhaps we should seek to understand rather than destroy. Your philosophical musings have no place in this matter, Sakazuki growled. Prepare your forces, Admiral. That's an order. As Fujitora reluctantly rose to comply, the fleet admiral turned to stare out the window toward the sea. Straw Hat Luffy, he muttered. What have you become? Back on the Thousand Sunny, Nami plotted their course to the North Blue while Chopper continued treating Zoro in the infirmary. The swordsman had regained consciousness but remained badly injured, his body bearing the marks of multiple admiral powers. The rest of the crew had gathered on deck, watching Luffy as he sat cross-legged at the bow, eyes closed in meditation, something none of them had ever seen him do before. He hasn't moved for hours, Usopp whispered. It's creeping me out. He's trying to center himself, Robin explained. To find balance among the chaotic energies within him. Is it working? Brooke asked, peering at their unusually still captain. As if in answer, a faint glow began to emanate from Luffy's body, not the violent, uncontrolled energy they'd witnessed earlier, but a steady, pulsing light that cycled slowly through all 5 colors. I think it is, Sanji said, impressed. Never thought I'd see the day when that rubber-brained idiot would actually sit still and focus. Suddenly, Luffy's eyes snapped open. In one fluid motion, he stood and turned toward the horizon behind them. They're coming, he said simply. Who's coming? Frankie asked, already moving toward the helm. Marines. Lots of them. Luffy's voice was unnervingly calm. I can sense them, the way Fujitora could sense things with his gravity. There's at least 10 warships heading this way, moving fast. Nami quickly climbed to the crow's nest with her telescope. After a moment of scanning, she called down in alarm. He's right. Buster Call formation, bearing down on us from the southeast. A Buster Call. Already? Usopp's knees began to knock together. How did they find us so fast? They must have been watching the island, Robin reasoned, her face paling slightly at the mention of the dreaded Buster Call. They saw what Luffy can do. We can't outrun a Buster Call, Frankie said grimly. Not with their fastest ships in pursuit. And we can't fight them, Sanji added. Not with Zoro down and Luffy's powers unstable. All eyes turned to their captain, expecting his usual bravado, his confident declaration that he'd beat them all. Instead, Luffy stood silently, his expression thoughtful. I could destroy those ships, he said finally. All of them. I can feel the power to do it. The crew exchanged worried glances. But you can't control it, Nami reminded him gently. You might sink us too. Or worse, Robin added. That much power unleashed at sea could trigger tsunamis that would devastate coastal communities for hundreds of miles. Luffy nodded, acknowledging their concerns. Then we run. But not forever. I need to master these powers, and fast. He turned to Nami. How long until we reach Trafalgar? At top speed, 3 days to the nearest North Blue entrance point, then another 2 to his last known location. Too long, Luffy decided. They'll catch us before then. Then we need somewhere closer, Frankie said. Somewhere to hide while you practice control. Or someone closer who can help, Chopper suggested, emerging from the infirmary. Zoro's stable. But still needs rest. Luffy paced the deck, an unusual sight for the normally impulsive captain. As he walked, small manifestations of his powers appeared and disappeared, frost forming under one footstep, a tiny sprout growing from another, a flicker of light here, a wisp of magma there, the occasional floating pebble caught in a gravity field. Wait, he said suddenly, stopping mid-stride. I know who can help. Someone who's an expert in hockey and controlling powerful forces. Who? Several crew members asked simultaneously. Luffy turned to them, a familiar grin spreading across his face for the first time since the incident. Rayleigh. Silver's Rayleigh. He helped me master my hockey before, he can help me with this too. Rayleigh. Nami considered this. Last I heard, He was back in Sabaody, taking a break from swimming the calm belt. Sabaody's much closer than the North Blue, Frankie noted. We could make it in a day and a half at full speed. If we can shake the Buster Call, Usopp reminded them nervously. Luffy's grin widened. I might not be able to control all these powers together yet, but I can use them one at a time for short bursts. He looked to Frankie. Get the coup de burst ready. I'm going to give it a little extra kick. What are you planning? Nami asked, recognizing the dangerous gleam in her captain's eyes. Ice to cool the engine so they can work harder. Gravity to lighten the ship. Light to boost our speed. Luffy cracked his knuckles. We're going to jump out of here faster than any ship has ever moved. That's crazy. Usopp protested. You could tear the Sunny apart. Sounds super to me. Frankie grinned, already moving to prepare the ship's special propulsion system. The Sunny's strong, she can take it. Everyone secure everything and hold on tight, Nami ordered, recognizing that Luffy's mind was made up. This is going to be rough. As the crew scrambled to batten down everything that could move, Luffy made his way to the ship's stern where Frankie was preparing the coup de burst. He placed one hand on the engine, which immediately frosted over with a layer of perfectly controlled ice. Supercooling the combustion chamber, Frankie explained to the others. It'll allow for higher compression without melting the pistons. Smart thinking, Luffy. Next, Luffy raised his other hand, and the entire ship seemed to lighten, the waves barely moving it as it rose slightly in the water. Reducing our mass with gravity control, Robin observed, bracing herself against the mast. Everyone ready? Frankie called. Coup de burst in 3, 2, 1. Light speed boost. Luffy shouted, his body glowing yellow as he channeled Kizaru's power into the ship itself. The combined effect was spectacular. The coup de burst, already capable of launching the ship over great distances, was magnified tenfold by Luffy's additional powers. The Thousand Sunny didn't just jump, it practically teleported, shooting forward so fast that the crew experienced momentary blackout from the G-forces. When they could see again, the Marine fleet was nowhere in sight, and they were speeding across the ocean faster than should have been physically possible, leaving a rainbow trail of elemental energy in their wake. That was awesome. Luffy shouted, pumping his fists in the air. Did you see how fast he swayed suddenly, his eyes rolling back, and collapsed to the deck. Luffy. Chopper rushed to him, quickly checking his vitals. He's completely drained. Using multiple powers in such a controlled way must have taken everything he had. But he did it, Nami said softly, looking back at the empty horizon behind them. He controlled the powers enough to save us. For now, Robin added. But the Marines won't give up. Not after seeing what he can do. As if to emphasize her point, a news coup bird swooped down, dropping the latest edition of the World Economic Journal on the deck. Sanji picked it up, his cigarette falling from his lips as he saw the front page. They already know, he said, turning the paper so everyone could see. The headline read, Straw Hat Luffy, the 5-powered monster, above a hastily compiled but still recognizable image of Luffy with his various elemental powers activated. Below that, in smaller text, World Government declares unprecedented threat level, 500 billion berry bounty for capture, dead or alive. 500 billion. Nami gasped, her eyes wide. That's 50 times higher than any bounty in history, Robin finished, her voice grim. The entire world will be hunting him now. As the implications sank in, Chopper and Frankie carefully carried the unconscious Luffy to his quarters. Despite the gravity of their situation, there was a new feeling aboard the Thousand Sunny, a mixture of fear, yes, but also determination. Their captain had shown the first signs of controlling his incredible new powers. If they could reach Rayleigh in time, perhaps there was hope after all. The journey to Sabaody Archipelago was tense but uneventful. The Straw Hats maintained constant vigilance, expecting pursuit at any moment, but Luffy's spectacular escape seemed to have bought them time. Either that, or the Marines were regrouping for an even larger assault. Luffy spent most of the journey either sleeping, his body seemingly requiring massive amounts of rest to integrate his new powers, or in careful practice sessions with Robin, whose methodical approach to knowledge made her the ideal tutor in Zoro's absence. By the time the distinctive bubble-covered mangroves of Sabaody came into view, Luffy had made significant progress. He could now control each individual Admiral power for several minutes at a time without incident, though combining them remained dangerous. "Remember the plan," Nami reminded everyone as they prepared to dock. "We stay low profile. No one separates. We find Rayleigh and get out of here as quickly as possible. The archipelago will be crawling with bounty hunters and Marines," Robin warned. 500 billion berries will draw every ambitious fighter in the world." Luffy nodded, unusually serious. "I'll wear the disguise." 10 minutes later, a very poorly disguised Luffy, wearing just a fake mustache and sunglasses, led his equally conspicuous crew through the lawless zones of Sabaody. Despite Nami's facepalm at their captain's idea of stealth, they managed to avoid immediate recognition by sticking to back alleys. "Shaki's bar should be just ahead," Robin directed, consulting her mental map of the archipelago. "If anyone knows where Rayleigh is, she will." They rounded a corner and found themselves face to face with the infamous rip-off bar. As they approached, the door swung open, and a familiar silver-haired figure stepped out, pipe in hand. "Took you long enough," Silver's Rayleigh said with a knowing smile. "I've been expecting you, Luffy." "Rayleigh." Luffy's face lit up, his fake mustache falling off in his excitement. "How did you know we were coming?" The Dark King tapped his temple. "Observation hockey. I sensed a massive disturbance in the world's balance days ago. When I heard the rumors about you, I put two and two together." His expression grew more serious. "Plus, your bounty poster is on every wall from here to Marie Geos." "Then you know why we need your help," Zoro said. He had recovered enough to walk, though his movements were still stiff and pained. Rayleigh nodded, his eyes fixing on Luffy with an intensity that seemed to see through him. "I can feel them. 5 distinct powers, all Admiral level, swirling inside you like caged beasts." He gestured for them to follow him inside. "Come. We have much to discuss, and little time." Inside Shaki's bar, the proprietor greeted them with her usual cool smile, seemingly unsurprised by their arrival. "The Marines have established checkpoints at every grove entrance," she informed them as she served drinks. "Admiral Kizaru himself is coordinating the search from Grove 60. "Kizaru?" Usopp gulped nervously. "We barely escaped him last time we were here." "We don't need to escape this time," Luffy said, his voice steady. "I can match him now. I just need to learn how." Rayleigh studied Luffy for a long moment, then nodded decisively. "There's a place we can go. An island not far from here where I trained you before. We can begin immediately." "How long will it take?" Nami asked. "The Marines are getting closer every minute." "For normal training?" "Months, perhaps years," Rayleigh said honestly. "But we don't have that luxury." He turned to Luffy. "I'm going to teach you an advanced technique, one that will help you harmonize these conflicting powers through the application of advanced Conqueror's Haki. It's dangerous, and ordinarily, I wouldn't even suggest it without years of preparation." "But?" Luffy prompted. "But you're Monkey D. Luffy," Rayleigh grinned. "If anyone can master it in days instead of years, it's you." The old pirate stood, his weathered face serious again. "We should leave immediately. The longer we stay in one place," the bar door burst open, revealing a squad of white-clad figures with identical masks. At their center stood a tall man with a goatee and cold eyes. "CP-0, Robin whispered, her face paling. "Straw Hat Luffy," the leader announced. "By order of the 5 elders themselves, you are to be terminated immediately as a threat to world stability." "So much for our low profile," Sanji muttered, stepping forward to shield Nami and Robin. Luffy stood slowly, facing the world government's elite assassination squad without fear. "I'm not going anywhere. I still have a dream to fulfill." "Your dream is irrelevant," the CP-0 agent replied coldly. "The power you now possess cannot be allowed to exist." He raised his hand, signaling his squad to attack. What happened next occurred so quickly that most of those present could barely follow it. The CP-0 agents blurred into motion, using their advanced Rokushiki techniques to attack from all angles simultaneously. At the same moment, Rayleigh's body shimmered with the dark lightning of Conqueror's Haki, while the Straw Hat crew moved to defensive positions. But it was Luffy who truly shocked everyone. Without apparent effort, his body began cycling through Admiral powers in perfect sequence, ice freezing one attacker, light phasing through another's attack, gravity pinning a third to the wall, plant tendrils ensnaring a fourth, and magma forcing the fifth back. Unlike his previous chaotic manifestations, this time the transitions were smooth, controlled, each power activated exactly when needed and only where needed. No collateral damage, no wild energy releases, just precise application of overwhelming force. The entire CP-0 squad was neutralized in seconds, leaving only their leader standing. "Impossible," the man breathed, his composure finally breaking. "No one can control multiple devil fruit powers with such precision. It defies all known limits." "I'm still figuring it out," Luffy replied with his characteristic grin. "But I'm getting better." The CP-0 leader assessed his defeated squad, then Rayleigh's battle-ready stance, then the determined Straw Hat crew. Making a tactical decision, he activated a small device on his wrist. "This isn't over, Straw Hat. The world government will never allow such power to roam free." With that, he vanished in a burst of something resembling paper, taking his defeated agents with him. Paper fruit, Robin observed. "A new CP-0 transportation technique. They'll report our location immediately," Frankie warned. "We need to move." Rayleigh nodded, surprisingly calm despite the battle. "That was impressive, Luffy. You showed better control than I expected." "It just clicked," Luffy said, looking as surprised as everyone else. "Like my body suddenly remembered how to use each power without fighting itself." "That's the first step," Rayleigh explained as they hurriedly exited the bar. "But it won't last. Under stress, the powers will conflict again unless you master the harmonization technique." They made their way quickly through back alleys toward Grove 13, where the Thousand Sunny waited. As they ran, the sounds of marine mobilization echoed throughout the archipelago, whistles, shouted orders, the thump of boots on wood. "Shaki will create a diversion," Rayleigh assured them as they reached the grove's edge. "But we need to be ready to depart the moment we reach your ship." As they burst from the tree line onto the dock, they were met with an unwelcome sight. The Thousand Sunny was surrounded by marine battleships, and standing on the nearest vessel's deck was the unmistakable yellow-suited figure of Admiral Kizaru. My, the Admiral drawled, his voice carrying across the water. Straw Hat Luffy and his little friends, all in one convenient location. And look, the Dark King himself as a bonus. What a productive day. Kizaru, Luffy growled, stepping forward. Rayleigh placed a restraining hand on his shoulder. Not yet, Luffy. You're not ready to face an Admiral one-on-one, especially one whose powers you now share. The feedback could be catastrophic. Then what do we do? Chopper asked frantically. We're trapped. We fight smart, Rayleigh replied, his eyes scanning the situation. Luffy, remember how your gravity and ice work together against CP-0? Try it on a larger scale, but controlled, focused. Luffy nodded, understanding. He closed his eyes, concentrating as he had during the recent battle. When they opened again, they glowed with a purple-blue light. Everyone behind me, he ordered, his voice resonating with power. As the crew complied, Luffy stepped to the edge of the dock, facing the marine blockade. He raised both hands, one glowing with Fujitora's gravity power, the other with Akiji's ice. Ice Age, Gravity Lock, he called out, combining the techniques in a way neither admiral had ever achieved. The effect was spectacular. The water around the marine ships suddenly grew heavy, dragging the vessels downward while simultaneously freezing solid, trapping them in a gravity-enhanced ice field that cracked and groaned under the immense pressure. Fascinating, Kizaru commented, seeming more interested than alarmed as his ship began to sink into the freezing water. Such creative application. With a lazy gesture, he transformed into light and appeared on the dock before them, his usual laid-back expression unchanged. But not quite fast enough. Before anyone could react, Kizaru launched a light kick at Luffy's chest, only for his leg to pass harmlessly through as Luffy's body transformed into light as well. What? Kizaru's eyes widened in genuine surprise. You can use my power, against me? I'm still learning, Luffy replied, his body flickering between solid and light. But yeah, pretty much. For perhaps the first time in his career, Admiral Kizaru looked truly concerned. This is most troubling. Taking advantage of the Admiral's momentary hesitation, Rayleigh moved with the incredible speed that had made him legendary. Go, he shouted to the Straw Hats. Get to your ship. I'll hold him off. But Rayleigh, Luffy began. This isn't the time or place for your training, the Dark King cut him off. Head to Rusakana Island, you remember the way. I'll meet you there when I can. Now go. Seeing the determination in his mentor's eyes, Luffy nodded reluctantly. As Rayleigh engaged Kizaru in a blinding exchange of hockey-infused blows, the Straw Hats raced for their ship. What about the ice? Nami called as they ran. We're trapped too. Luffy grinned, his eyes flashing green. Leave that to me. Reaching the frozen harbor, he placed his hands on the ice and channeled Ryakuji's life absorption power. The massive ice field began to crack and dissolve as Luffy literally drained the life energy from it, converting the solid mass back into liquid water in seconds. That's new, Frankie observed as a clear path opened to the sunny. Using plant powers on ice. Life is life, Robin explained, impressed. The Admiral powers seemed to be more versatile in Luffy's hands than in their original owners. They boarded quickly, with Frankie immediately preparing the engines for departure. Behind them, the spectacular light show of Rayleigh vs. Kizaru lit up the grove, buying them precious time. Coup de burst ready. Frankie called from the helm. Wait, Luffy said, looking back at the battle. We can't just leave Rayleigh. He gave us an order, Captain, Zoro reminded him, his voice respectful but firm. And a destination. The best way to honor him is to follow it. Luffy hesitated, clearly torn, then nodded. Rusakana Island. Full speed. As the Thousand Sunny blasted away from Sabaody Archipelago, leaving the marine blockade in disarray behind them, Luffy stood at the stern, watching the fading lights of battle. I'll master this power, Rayleigh, he promised quietly. And then I'll come back stronger than ever. 5 days later, the Thousand Sunny dropped anchor off the coast of Rusakana, the uninhabited island where Luffy had spent 2 years training with Rayleigh before reuniting with his crew. The harsh landscape was exactly as Luffy remembered, wild, dangerous, and perfect for intense training. 48 seasons in a year, Luffy explained to his crew as they made camp on the beach. Summer, winter, everything in between, sometimes all in one day. The animals are huge and vicious. It's the perfect place to train without hurting anyone. And the perfect place to hide, Robin added. No civilization for hundreds of miles in any direction. How long do we wait for Rayleigh? Nami asked, setting up her weather instruments to monitor the island's chaotic climate. Luffy looked toward the horizon. He'll come. But we don't wait to start. I can feel these powers growing stronger every day. If I don't master them soon. He didn't need to finish the thought. They had all witnessed the devastation he could accidentally cause. So what's the plan? Sanji asked, lighting a cigarette. Just start blasting away at mountains? No, Luffy said, his expression serious. Rayleigh told me about a technique, harmonization. Using Conqueror's haki to bring different powers into balance. Can you do that without him here to guide you? Brook asked. Luffy nodded. I think so. When we fought CP0, something clicked. For a few moments, all the powers worked together instead of fighting each other. He held out his hand, demonstrating as small manifestations of each Admiral power flickered across his palm in sequence. I need to make that permanent. Then that's what we'll focus on, Zoro said, now fully recovered from his injuries. I'll help. My Conqueror's haki isn't as strong as yours, but I understand the principle. For the next week, Luffy trained relentlessly, pushing his control over each individual power to its limits before attempting to harmonize them. The progress was evident, where before his transformations had been chaotic and explosive, they now showed increasing precision. He could freeze a single leaf without affecting the branch. Create a tiny gravity well that affected only what he chose. Transform just his fingertip into light or magma. Absorb life from specific targets while leaving their surroundings untouched. But combining powers remained elusive. Each attempt at using two simultaneously resulted in wild energy fluctuations that Luffy struggled to contain. On the 8th day, as Luffy sat meditating at the island's highest peak, Zoro approached with news. Ship spotted on the horizon, the swordsman reported. Could be Rayleigh. Could be trouble. Luffy didn't open his eyes. I know. I can sense it, about 40 people on board. Their intentions. He frowned. Unclear. Not immediately hostile. Zoro raised an eyebrow, impressed by Luffy's developing sensory abilities. Your observation haki is getting sharper. It's mixing with Fujitora's powers somehow, Luffy explained. I can feel gravity shifts from really far away now. They made their way down to the beach, where the rest of the crew had already spotted the approaching vessel, a sleek ship flying no flag. Pirates? Marines? Bounty hunters? Usopp wondered nervously, his sniper goggles focused on the distant vessel. None of the above, a familiar voice called from behind them. They turned to find Trafalgar Law walking out of the forest, his Nodachi resting casually on his shoulder. Traffy! Luffy exclaimed, genuinely pleased to see his occasional ally. What are you doing here? Looking for you, Law replied coolly. And it wasn't easy. You've caused quite the stir, Straw Hat. The entire world is hunting for the man with 5 admiral powers. How did you find us? Robin asked, suspicious. Law shrugged. I have my sources. Plus, Rayleigh contacted me. Rayleigh? Luffy perked up. Is he okay? Is he with you? He's fine. Currently leading 3 Admiral pursuit squads on a wild chase through the New World. Law nodded toward the approaching ship. That's my crew. We came to help, professional interest, you might say. Multiple devil fruit powers in one body. It's unprecedented. We were planning to find you next, Nami explained. We thought your medical knowledge might help Luffy control his powers. Law's expression remained impassive, but his eyes revealed genuine scientific curiosity. I've been researching the phenomenon since I heard the rumors. Theoretically, it should be impossible. The powers should be tearing you apart from the inside. They were at first, Luffy admitted. Still are, sometimes. But I'm getting better at making them work together. Show me, Law requested. Luffy nodded, stepping away from the group. He closed his eyes, concentrating, and his right arm transformed into glowing magma while his left became crystalline ice. Where the two elements met at his torso, instead of conflict, there was a smooth gradient, a perfect balance of opposing forces. Remarkable, Law murmured, circling Luffy with clinical interest. Your body is adapting at the cellular level. The devil fruit energies are harmonizing. That's what Rayleigh called it, Luffy said, returning to normal. Harmonization. Law nodded thoughtfully. I'd like to examine you more thoroughly. My devil fruit allows me to literally see inside your body, to understand how these powers are interacting with your organs and nervous system. Will it help me control them better? Possibly. At the very least, it might prevent you from accidentally killing yourself or your friends. While Law began his examination, his crew arrived and set up an impromptu medical lab on the beach. The Straw Hats watched with varying degrees of concern as Law used his oak fruit to painlessly dissect Luffy, studying the flow of energies through his body. Fascinating, the surgeon commented as he worked. The powers aren't just coexisting, they're evolving. Adapting to each other and to your original rubber abilities. Is that good or bad? Chopper asked, professionally interested despite his worry for his captain. Neither. It's unprecedented. Law manipulated the floating cross-section of Luffy's torso, highlighting strange energy patterns. See these connections? The devil fruit powers are creating new pathways, almost like they're communicating with each other. Can you help me make them work together all the time? Luffy asked, seemingly unconcerned about being in pieces. Law considered this. I believe I can create a temporary solution, a kind of internal surgery that harmonizes the energy pathways. But it won't last. Only you can create a permanent harmony through mastery of each power. Do it, Luffy decided. Even temporary control is better than none. For the next several hours, Law performed his delicate operation, using his devil fruit abilities to restructure the energy pathways within Luffy's body. The Straw Hat Captain remained conscious throughout, occasionally offering insights about how each power felt as Law manipulated it. Finally, the surgeon stepped back, releasing his power and allowing Luffy to reassemble into his normal form. It's done, Law announced, clearly fatigued from the complex procedure. I've created balanced channels for each power. They should flow more naturally now, with less resistance when you switch between them or combine them. Luffy stood, looking down at his hands. I feel different. Calmer inside, like the powers aren't fighting each other anymore. Test it, Law suggested. But start small. Nodding, Luffy focused on his right hand. In sequence, he transformed it from rubber to magma to ice to light to plant matter, each transition smooth and controlled. Then, more impressively, he created a swirling combination of all 5 powers in his palm, a miniature maelstrom of perfectly balanced elemental forces. This is amazing. Luffy grinned, watching the swirling energies. They're all working together. Don't get overconfident, Law warned. What I did was temporary, think of it as training wheels. The pathways I created will eventually break down as the powers continue to evolve. You need to use this time to develop your own control. How long do I have? Law shrugged. A week. Maybe 2. It depends on how quickly your body adapts. Luffy nodded, his expression becoming determined. Then I'll make every second count. Zoro, he called to his first mate. Time for the real training to begin. As Luffy and Zoro moved to a clearing for combat practice, Nami approached Law. Thank you for this. We were desperate. Don't thank me yet, Law replied grimly. What I've done isn't a cure, it's a stopgap. And there's something else you should know. He lowered his voice, ensuring Luffy couldn't overhear. During the examination, I discovered something troubling. These powers aren't just sitting in his body, they're integrating with his very being. Isn't that good? Nami asked, confused. If they become part of him naturally. You don't understand. Total integration means there will be no turning back. Whatever cosmic event gave him these powers, it's not necessarily permanent yet. But soon, within months perhaps, the change will be irreversible. The implications sank in. You mean he'll be stuck with all these powers forever? He'll always be hunted? Law nodded. Unless we can find a way to safely remove them before complete integration. And given the unprecedented nature of this situation, I'm not sure that's possible. Does Luffy know? Not yet. I thought you should decide how to tell him, or whether to tell him at all. Nami looked across the beach to where her captain was now demonstrating his improved control, creating spectacular but contained displays of Admiral powers that had Chopper and Usopp cheering. He needs to know, she decided. But not today. Let him enjoy this victory first. For the next 3 days, Luffy trained continuously, pushing the limits of Law's temporary fix while working to establish his own control. The improvement was remarkable. He could now freely combine 2 or even 3 powers simultaneously with minimal strain, creating techniques that none of the original Admiral users could have imagined. Ice reinforced with gravity's pressure to create barriers of incredible strength. Light speed enhanced by rubber elasticity for movement that bordered on teleportation. Magma shaped and controlled by plant life manipulation to create precisely targeted attacks. On the 4th day, as Luffy demonstrated a particularly impressive combination of all 5 powers, a swirling sphere of elemental forces held perfectly in balance above his palm, a familiar presence arrived on the island. Your control has improved dramatically, Silver's Rayleigh observed, walking into the training clearing with his characteristic laid-back confidence. But you're still using brute force rather than true harmony. Rayleigh. Luffy dismissed the energy sphere, rushing to greet his mentor with a rubber-stretched hug. You made it. The Dark King chuckled, weathering the enthusiastic greeting with practiced ease. I led our marine friends on quite the chase. They won't find this island anytime soon. After greetings were exchanged and Rayleigh was brought up to speed on Law's temporary solution, the old pirate grew serious. What Law did was impressive and necessary, he acknowledged. But as he said, it's temporary. True mastery requires something deeper, a fundamental understanding of the nature of these powers and how they relate to your own will. I'm ready to learn, Luffy said, his usual exuberance tempered with sincere determination. Rayleigh nodded, pleased by his student's attitude. Then we begin now. The technique I'm going to teach you is called Will Manifestation, an advanced application of Conqueror's Haki that few have ever mastered. Over the next 2 days, Rayleigh pushed Luffy through training more intense than anything the young captain had experienced before. Unlike their previous Haki training, which had focused on perception and application, this was about integration, using Conqueror's Haki not as an external force but as an internal organizing principle. Your will is the key, Rayleigh explained as they meditated atop the island's highest peak. These Admiral powers each have their own nature, their own will of sorts. Instead of forcing them to obey you, you must make them extensions of your own will, as natural as breathing. By the 7th day of Luffy's overall training, the temporary pathways Law had created began to deteriorate, just as the surgeon had predicted. During a particularly intense session, Luffy suddenly dropped to his knees, his body fluctuating between different elemental states as pain racked his frame. It's happening, Law warned the others as they rushed to Luffy's side. The pathways are breaking down. Perfect timing, Rayleigh said, surprisingly calm. Now we'll see if he's truly learned what I've been teaching. Are you crazy? Nami shouted, genuinely angry. He's in agony. This is the moment of truth, Rayleigh insisted. Luffy must find his own harmony now, or he never will. As the crew watched in horror, Luffy's body became a battleground of conflicting powers, ice freezing patches of skin while magma melted others, light making parts of him intangible while gravity crushed what remained solid, plant life sprouting and withering in chaotic cycles. Luffy! Zoro called out, his hand on his swords but powerless to help. Remember what Rayleigh taught you. Your will controls everything. Through the pain, Luffy heard his first mate's voice. His eyes, flashing through different colored glows, fixed on Zoro's face. Then on each of his crew members in turn. Finally, on Rayleigh's calm, confident expression. Something clicked in that moment. Not a technique or a skill, but an understanding, deep and fundamental. These powers weren't foreign entities to be controlled. They were now part of him, extensions of his will, just as his rubber body had always been. Luffy closed his eyes, and instead of fighting the chaotic energies, he embraced them. Accepted them as himself. Harmonized his will with theirs. The transformation was immediate and awe-inspiring. The chaotic fluctuations ceased. Luffy's body stabilized, then began to glow with a steady, pulsing light that cycled smoothly through all 5 colors plus his original rubber power. When he opened his eyes, they were clear and determined. "I get it now," he said simply, rising to his feet with a new steadiness. "They're not separate from me. They're me." Rayleigh's face broke into a proud smile. "Exactly. That's the secret of true mastery. Not control, but harmony." To demonstrate his newfound understanding, Luffy raised both hands. From one, he created a perfect sphere of swirling magma, from the other, an identical sphere of ice. He brought them together, and instead of canceling each other out or exploding from the thermal shock, they merged into a single stable orb where fire and ice coexisted in impossible harmony. "Impressive," Law acknowledged, genuinely amazed. "You've achieved in days what should have taken years." "That's our captain," Zoro said, his pride evident. As the demonstration concluded and the crew celebrated this breakthrough, Robin approached with a serious expression. "This is a momentous achievement," she acknowledged. "But it doesn't solve our larger problem. The entire world is still hunting Luffy. The world government, marines, pirate emperors, bounty hunters, all see him as either a threat to eliminate or a power to control." The celebration sobered as reality reasserted itself. "Robin's right," Nami agreed. "Even with perfect control, Luffy can't spend the rest of his life running and hiding. So what do we do?" Chopper asked, looking from face to face for answers. It was Luffy who spoke, his voice carrying the quiet confidence that had made his crew follow him through impossible odds time and again. "We do what we've always done," he said simply. "We keep moving forward. I'm still going to be king of the pirates. These powers don't change that, they just make the journey different." He looked at each of his loyal crew members, his expression serious but determined. "But I won't ask any of you to face what's coming if you don't want to. The danger is bigger now. Anyone who wants to leave can leave. No hard feelings." The response was immediate and unanimous. "Don't be an idiot," Zoro scoffed. "As if we'd abandon you now," Nami added with a roll of her eyes. "The great Captain Usopp never abandons his crew," Usopp declared, his knees only slightly shaking. One by one, each Straw Hat reaffirmed their loyalty, their determination to stand by their captain regardless of the dangers ahead. As the sun set on Rusakana Island, casting long shadows across the beach where the thousand Sunny waited, Luffy stood with his crew, Rayleigh, and Law, looking out toward the horizon. "So what's our next move, Captain?" Sanji asked, lighting a fresh cigarette. Luffy grinned, the familiar straw hat shadowing his eyes. "First, we thank Traffy and Rayleigh for all their help." He turned to the 2 men who had guided him through this crisis. "I couldn't have done this without you guys. Consider us even for now," Law replied with a small smile. "Though I'll be keeping an eye on your progress. Scientifically speaking, you're the most interesting case I've ever encountered." "I've taught you what I can," Rayleigh said. "The rest is up to you. Roger would be proud of the man you're becoming, Luffy." With farewells exchanged, Law departed on his submarine with his crew, heading in the opposite direction from the Straw Hats' planned route to minimize attention. Rayleigh chose to remain on the island temporarily. "I'll lay some false trails for our marine friends," he promised. "Buy you some time to decide your next move." As the Thousand Sunny prepared to set sail, Nami approached Luffy at the bow. "There's something you should know," she said quietly. Something Law discovered during his examination. She explained what the surgeon had told her, about the powers gradually integrating permanently with Luffy's being, about the rapidly closing window to potentially reverse the process. Luffy listened silently, his expression thoughtful. When she finished, he smiled gently. Thanks for telling me, Nami. Aren't you concerned? If these powers become permanent. They already are, he said with simple acceptance. The moment I stuck my hand in that cosmic thing, this became part of my journey. Whether the powers stay forever or not doesn't matter, what matters is what I do with them while I have them. He looked out at the setting sun, his profile outlined in gold. I'm still me. Still Monkey D. Luffy. Still going to be king of the pirates. The road just got more interesting, that's all. As the Thousand Sunny sailed away from Rizakana Island, the horizon ahead was uncertain. The greatest powers in the world were hunting them. Unprecedented dangers awaited. But aboard the ship, there was a sense of calm determination. Their captain had faced the chaos within himself and found harmony. Whatever came next, they would face it together, as they always had. And Luffy, standing at the bow with the wind in his face, felt the 5 Admiral powers flowing through him in perfect balance, no longer foreign or frightening, but simply new aspects of his ever-evolving strength. The next chapter of their journey had begun. Chapter 2, Hunt for the Living Weapon. The moon hung low over the Thousand Sunny as it sliced through the midnight waters. 2 weeks had passed since they'd left Rizakana Island, and the Straw Hats had settled into an uneasy routine of constant vigilance. Tonight was Zoro's watch, and he sat cross-legged in the crow's nest, one eye open as always. Something didn't feel right. The sea was too calm. The air too still. A faint vibration in the ship's hull made him tense. He hadn't heard anything, hadn't seen anything, but years of honed instinct told him they weren't alone. In one fluid motion, Zoro grabbed his swords and descended to the main deck. He moved silently to Luffy's quarters and knocked once. I know, came Luffy's voice before Zoro's knuckles even left the door. I felt them 5 minutes ago. The door opened to reveal Luffy fully dressed, hat firmly in place. The captain's eyes glowed faintly with a purple tint, Fujitora's gravity sense extending his awareness across miles of ocean. 3 ships, Luffy said, stepping onto the deck. Moving in formation. Not Marines. Zoro nodded. Pirates. Yeah. Luffy's expression hardened. And I recognize the lead ships, wait. It's Blackbeard. That single name sent a jolt of alertness through Zoro. I'll wake the others. Within minutes, the entire crew stood assembled on deck, weapons ready, eyes scanning the darkness. Frankie had powered up the ship's defense systems, while Usopp nervously adjusted his goggles, trying to spot their pursuers in the darkness. There. Usopp pointed to port. 3 ships, coming in fast. Through the gloom, they could now make out 3 massive vessels approaching in a pincer formation. The lead ship flew a flag that sent chills down even the bravest spines, a standard bearing 3 skulls. Marshal D. Teach, Robin said grimly. The man who stole Whitebeard's power. He wants mine too, Luffy said, his voice unnervingly calm. I can feel his greed from here. Nami stepped forward, navigation charts in hand. We're still 2 days from Amazon Lily. We could try to outrun them with a coup de burst. No, Luffy decided, his eyes fixed on the approaching ships. We've been running for weeks. Time to find out exactly what we're dealing with. Are you sure that's wise? Brook asked. Blackbeard possesses 2 devil fruit powers himself, the dark fruit and the tremor fruit. A confrontation could be catastrophic. Luffy nodded. That's why I need to face him now, while we're at sea, away from innocent people. If he's hunting us anyway, better to choose the battlefield. No one argued further. They'd all seen Luffy's growth over the past weeks, not just in power but in wisdom. His decisions carried a new weight, a consideration for consequences that his earlier adventures had sometimes lacked. What's the plan? Sanji asked, lighting a cigarette. I'll meet him alone, Luffy replied. On the water between our ships. Alone? Chopper protested. But, not up for debate, Luffy cut him off gently but firmly. If things go bad, I need you all safe on the Sunny, ready to escape. Besides, he added with a familiar grin, I'm not exactly outgunned anymore. As the Blackbeard pirates' vessels drew closer, a den mushy on the Sunny crackled to life, projecting a voice that dripped with malicious confidence. Straw Hat Luffy. Blackbeard's distinctive laugh echoed across the waters. Zihahaha. No need to run. I just want to talk. Luffy picked up the receiver. Then talk. Not over a snail. Face to face. Captain to captain. I give you my word, no tricks. Just a conversation between two men who've both done the impossible. Luffy's eyes narrowed. Your word doesn't mean much, Teach. Zihahaha. Smart boy. But think about it, if I wanted a fight, would I announce myself? I could have attacked while you slept. I want to propose an alliance. The crew exchanged skeptical glances. I'll meet you, Luffy decided. Halfway between our ships. Just you and me. Perfect. I'm looking forward to seeing these new powers of yours up close. As the transmission ended, Nami grabbed Luffy's arm. You can't seriously trust him. I don't, Luffy assured her. But I want to hear what he has to say. And I want to see him for myself, see what I'm up against. Without waiting for further discussion, Luffy walked to the ship's railing. His legs transformed into a swirling mixture of light and magma, a combination that allowed him to literally walk on water, creating small, instantly cooled stepping stones of magma beneath his light-accelerated feet. The crew watched anxiously as their captain strode across the ocean surface toward the massive shadow of Blackbeard's flagship, which had pulled ahead of its escort vessels. A huge figure detached itself from the enemy ship, landing with a splash on a piece of driftwood that somehow supported his immense weight. Even from a distance, there was no mistaking the silhouette of Marshal D. Teach, Blackbeard himself. The two captains met in the open water, standing barely 20 feet apart, illuminated only by moonlight and the faint glow of Luffy's partially transformed body. Straw Hat. Blackbeard's voice boomed across the water. Look at you. The rumors don't do you justice. Zihahaha. Up close, Blackbeard was even more imposing than Luffy remembered, a mountain of a man with rotting teeth and calculating eyes that missed nothing. What do you want, Teach? Luffy asked directly, maintaining a ready stance. Blackbeard spread his massive arms wide. To offer you the opportunity of a lifetime. You and me, together. Can you imagine? The man with the powers of darkness and earthquakes, allied with the man who commands all 5 Admiral elements. We could overthrow the world government in a week. Rewrite the very laws of this world. Not interested, Luffy replied flatly. Blackbeard's smile didn't waver. Don't be hasty. You haven't heard my full proposal. He took a step closer, lowering his voice conspiratorially. I've learned something about your new powers, Straw Hat. Something important. Despite himself, Luffy's curiosity was piqued. What about them? They're not random. That cosmic event that gave them to you. It wasn't chance. It was destiny. Blackbeard's eyes gleamed fanatically in the moonlight. Those 5 powers, combined with your existing abilities, form a key to something ancient and powerful. What are you talking about? The true history. The Void Century. The ancient weapons. Blackbeard's voice rose with excitement. My crew has been researching. We found old texts that prophesied this very event. When the rubber man bears the power of 5 seas, the door to the final weapon shall open. Luffy's expression remained skeptical, but Robin, listening via a discreetly sprouted ear near Luffy, gasped quietly on the Sunny's deck. I don't care about weapons, Luffy stated. I never have. But you should. Blackbeard insisted. Because the world government does. Why do you think they've put such an astronomical bounty on your head? Why mobilize their entire forces? They fear what you might unlock. Luffy considered this. Even if that's true, why would I ever team up with you? Blackbeard's smile widened. Because I have information you need. About Joy Boy. About the will of D. About why you, specifically, received these powers. For a moment, Luffy said nothing, genuinely tempted by the prospect of answers to questions that had followed him his entire journey. Blackbeard, sensing his hesitation, pressed his advantage. Join me, and together we'll discover the truth. Oppose me. His voice hardened. And I'll be forced to take those powers from you. You can try, Luffy replied, his body beginning to glow brighter with multiple Admiral energies swirling just beneath his skin. Zihahaha. There's the Straw Hat spirit. Blackbeard laughed, seemingly delighted by the challenge. But consider my offer. I'll give you 3 days. We'll follow at a distance. When you're ready to talk seriously, just signal. With that, the pirate emperor turned his back, a deliberate show of either confidence or foolishness, and began walking back toward his ship. Luffy remained in place for a long moment, watching Blackbeard's retreating form, before returning to the Sunny. What did he want? Nami asked as soon as he stepped aboard. An alliance, Luffy replied, his expression troubled. Blackbeard never offers alliances unless he plans to betray them later, Robin noted. But I'm more concerned about what he said regarding your powers and ancient weapons. If he's found texts predicting this event, then the world government probably has too, Frankie finished grimly. Luffy nodded. He's going to follow us. Says he's giving me time to consider his offer, but really, he's just looking for a chance to steal these powers. Can he even do that? Chopper wondered aloud. Transfer multiple devil fruit powers. If anyone could find a way, it would be the man who already broke the rule about having only one, Zoro pointed out. Luffy looked back at the 3 pirate ships now maintaining position about a mile behind them. We stick to the plan. Full speed to Amazon Lily. We need to reach Hancock before Blackbeard makes his real move. Dawn broke over the calm belt, that strange region of sea notorious for its lack of winds and its abundance of sea kings. For most ships, crossing this dangerous zone would be suicidal, but the Thousand Sunny had an advantage. Frankie had adapted the ship's coating system to create a temporary bubble that masked their presence from the massive sea creatures below. Primitive version of the marine seastone technology, the cyborg explained proudly as they glided silently through the unnaturally still waters. Won't last forever, but should get us to Amazon Lily without being swallowed. What about our stalkers? Usopp asked, nervously eyeing the horizon where Blackbeard's fleet had maintained their distance throughout the night. They've fallen back, Nami reported from the crow's nest. Probably can't follow us into the calm belt without revealing themselves to the marine patrols. Or they're circling around to cut us off, Robin suggested more ominously. Luffy stood at the bow, his eyes closed in concentration. Over the past weeks, he had developed the habit of communing with his powers each morning, a form of meditation that helped maintain the delicate harmony Rayleigh had taught him. Today, however, something felt different. As he reached into the swirling energies within him, he sensed a subtle shift, a new pattern forming among the Admiral powers. They were continuing to evolve, to integrate more deeply with his original rubber abilities and with each other. Luffy? Zoro's voice broke his concentration. You okay? You've been standing there for an hour. Luffy opened his eyes, blinking in surprise. An hour? Felt like minutes. You were glowing, Zoro informed him. All 5 colors at once, but different somehow. More unified. I feel different, Luffy admitted, examining his hands. Like the powers are talking to each other now, not just to me. Learning from each other. Zoro raised an eyebrow. Is that good or bad? Don't know yet. But it feels right. Luffy grinned suddenly, the the familiar expression reassuring on his face after his moment of introspection. Anyway, how close are we to Amazon Lily? Should see it by midday, Zoro replied. Assuming we don't get eaten first. As if summoned by his words, the water ahead bulged upward as a massive shape rose from the depths. A sea king, one of the largest they'd ever encountered, broke the surface, its serpentine head rising hundreds of feet into the air above the ship. So much for the stealth bubble, Frankie muttered, already moving to activate the Sunny's defense systems. Before anyone could react further, Luffy stepped forward, his eyes flashing purple. With a simple gesture, he created a focused gravity field around the Sea King's head, just heavy enough to be uncomfortable without causing harm. The creature froze, its giant eyes blinking in confusion as it felt the strange pressure. Then, recognizing the source of the power, it did something none of them expected. It lowered its head in what could only be described as a bow, before silently sinking back beneath the waves. Did that Sea King just submit to you? Nami asked incredulously. It recognized his authority, Robin observed, fascinated. The Admiral powers must project a presence that even Sea Kings respect, or fear. Luffy looked troubled. I didn't want it to fear me. I just wanted it to leave us alone. Well, it worked, Sanji noted. And without anyone getting hurt. The incident was quickly forgotten as Amazon Lily appeared on the horizon, the island of women, home to the Kuja tribe, and the domain of the pirate empress Boa Hancock. As they approached, a familiar pattern of snake-headed ships moved to intercept them. Identify yourselves, a stern female voice called through a megaphone. This is sovereign Kuja territory. It's Luffy, he shouted back, waving enthusiastically. I need to see Hancock. There was a pause, then a flurry of excited voices from the Amazon ships. Within minutes, they had an honor guard escorting them to a hidden cove away from the main harbor. The Empress will meet you here, a tall Kuja warrior informed them as they dropped anchor. Only Luffy is permitted to step on our shores. That's fine, Luffy assured his crew. I need to talk to Hancock alone anyway. About that, Nami pulled him aside before he could disembark. What exactly is your plan here? How can Hancock help with your powers? Luffy's expression turned uncharacteristically serious. Rayleigh said the biggest danger with these powers is emotional instability. When I get too angry or scared or excited, the harmony breaks down. And Hancock helps with that. How? A slight blush colored Luffy's cheeks. She's always been really good at staying calm under pressure. And she's got this weird haki that Rayleigh mentioned, Sovereign's Will. It's like Conqueror's haki but focused inward. Helps control emotions. Nami studied his face for a moment, then nodded. Just be careful. We'll stay anchored here. As Luffy jumped ashore, the Kuja warriors led him through the jungle toward the palace. The island seemed unusually quiet, no crowds of curious Amazons following him this time, no children peeking from behind trees. Something's wrong, he noted to his guide. Where is everyone? The warrior's expression tightened. There have been incidents. Strange weather. Unusual animal behavior. The Empress ordered most of our people to remain in the city. Before Luffy could ask for clarification, they emerged into the palace courtyard. And there she was, Boa Hancock, the pirate empress herself, standing at the top of the grand staircase. As always, her beauty was breathtaking, her presence commanding. But today, there was something else in her expression as she gazed down at Luffy, concern, mixed with an emotion he couldn't quite identify. Leave us, she commanded her warriors, who immediately bowed and retreated. Luffy bounded up the stairs with his usual energy. Hancock. Thanks for letting us anchor here. I really need your help with, I know why you've come, she interrupted, her voice softer than her usual imperial tone. Word of your new powers has reached even our isolated shores. The elders have placed a bounty on your head that would buy nations. Yeah, it's been a crazy few weeks, Luffy admitted, scratching the back of his head. Hancock's expression softened further. Come. We should speak privately. She led him through the palace to a secluded garden courtyard where a small table had been prepared with an impressive array of food. Luffy's eyes lit up at the sight, and Hancock couldn't suppress a small smile at his predictable reaction. Eat, she offered. Then we'll talk. Luffy needed no further encouragement. As he devoured the feast with his usual enthusiasm, Hancock watched him with a mixture of fondness and concern. Your powers, she said when his initial hunger had been somewhat sated. Show me. Wiping his mouth, Luffy nodded and stood. With fluid grace that would have surprised his crew, he demonstrated each Admiral power in turn, transforming his arms into magma, then ice, then light, creating a small gravity well that lifted a stone bench, sprouting plants from the courtyard tiles before returning them to normal. Hancock observed without comment, her eyes missing nothing. When he finished, returning fully to his normal state, she finally spoke. Impressive control. But I sense conflict within you still. These powers pull in different directions, like strong-willed warriors who each want to lead the charge. Luffy nodded, surprised by her accurate assessment. That's why I came to you. Rayleigh said you could help me with the emotional part. When I get angry or scared, they start fighting each other again. Silver's Rayleigh sent you. Her expression warmed slightly. He is wise. Yes, I can help you, though the training will not be easy. We must strengthen your spirit as well as your control. I'll do whatever it takes, Luffy declared. Hancock studied him for a long moment. There is something else troubling you. Something beyond these new powers. Luffy hesitated, then sighed. Blackbeard is following us. He says my powers are connected to some ancient weapon or prophecy. That they're the key to something big. And this concerns you? I thought Monkey D. Luffy cared little for ancient mysteries. I don't. Not really. He frowned, struggling to articulate his thoughts. But I keep feeling like these powers came to me for a reason. Not just random luck. Like I'm supposed to do something specific with them. Hancock nodded thoughtfully. The old shamans of our tribe speak of destiny, not as a fixed path, but as a river with strong currents. Perhaps you have been caught in such a current. So how do I figure out which way to swim? A genuine smile touched Hancock's lips. That is what we will discover together. Back on the Thousand Sunny, the crew had settled in for what might be an extended stay. With Blackbeard's threat looming and the world government hunting them, Amazon Lily's protected waters offered a rare opportunity for rest. Robin sat on deck with several ancient texts spread around her, books she'd been studying since their encounter with Blackbeard. Finding anything interesting? Nami asked, bringing her a cup of tea. Robin accepted the drink gratefully. Perhaps. There are scattered references in several cultures to a convergence of elements that would herald a new age. Most dismiss it as myth, but myths often have a foundation in truth, Nami finished for her. Especially in the Grand Line. Exactly. And there's this. Robin pointed to a faded illustration in one of the older texts, a circular design showing 5 distinct symbols arranged around a central figure that looked suspiciously like the sun symbol associated with the ancient kingdom. The 5 elements? Robin nodded. Fire, ice, light, gravity, and life, represented in various forms across different cultures, but always the same 5. And always with the prediction that when unified in a single vessel, they would either bring salvation or destruction to the world. Well, that's comforting, Nami muttered. Their conversation was interrupted by Usopp calling from the crow's nest. Ship approaching. Not Kuja. Everyone instantly went on alert, moving to battle stations with practiced efficiency. But as the approaching vessel came into view, they relaxed slightly. It was a small, nondescript trader, not a marine warship or pirate vessel. Probably just lost, Frankie suggested. The Calm Belt isn't exactly a popular shipping lane. The trader anchored at a respectful distance and launched a single rowboat with one occupant. As the small boat approached the Sunny, they could make out an elderly man with a long white beard, wearing simple clothes. "Ahoy," the old man called up. "Permission to come aboard?" "I bring news for Monkey D. Luffy." The crew exchanged suspicious glances. "What kind of news?" Zoro called back, one hand resting on his swords. "The important kind," the old man replied cheerfully. "From an old friend." After a brief discussion, they lowered a rope ladder. The old man climbed aboard with surprising agility for his apparent age, bowing respectfully to the assembled pirates. "Grateful for your hospitality," he said, his voice carrying an accent none of them recognized. "I am but a humble messenger. Is your captain available?" "He's ashore," Sanji replied cautiously. "Who sent you?" "Ah, direct to business." "Very well." The old man reached into his robe and produced a sealed letter. "This comes from someone who identifies himself only as an observer of time." Robin stepped forward, taking the letter. "And how did this observer know where to find us?" The old man smiled enigmatically. "He said you would ask that." His answer was, "I know where all pieces on the board are, have been, and will be." A chill ran down Robin's spine at the phrasing. She broke the seal on the letter and unfolded it, reading aloud for the others, "To Monkey D. Luffy, bearer of the 5 Seas, your new powers are not a gift but a burden that will draw forces beyond your comprehension. The coming convergence cannot be stopped, but it can be guided. Seek the Temple of Ages on Temporal Isle before the 3rd full moon. Bring only those you trust with existence itself. Time grows short. The balance shifts." One who has seen the end. A heavy silence fell over the deck as Robin finished reading. "Well, that's not ominous at all," Usopp finally said, his voice higher than usual. "What's this convergence? And Temporal Isle? I've never seen it on any map," Nami said, looking troubled. The old messenger chuckled softly. "Temporal Isle appears only when it needs to be found, young navigator. As for the convergence..." His expression grew serious. "It is the alignment of forces that occurs once every 1,000 years. A time when the barriers between dimensions thin, allowing powers to flow between worlds. Like what happened to Luffy," Chopper realized. The messenger nodded. "The letter speaks true. Time grows short. The balance of forces has been disrupted, and consequences are already manifesting." "What consequences?" Frankie demanded. Instead of answering directly, the old man gestured toward the island. "Have you noticed the strange weather? The unusual behavior of animals? These are but symptoms of a deeper disturbance." Robin's eyes narrowed. "Who exactly is your employer, messenger?" For a moment, something ancient and knowing flickered in the old man's eyes. "One who stands outside the flow, watching the currents of causality. One who has seen civilizations rise and fall like tides." Before anyone could question him further, the messenger bowed again. "I have delivered my message. The choice to act upon it rests with your captain." He turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and one more thing, the Dark One who pursues you seeks not just the power but the key it represents. Trust nothing he says, but listen carefully to everything." With that cryptic warning, he descended the ladder and returned to his rowboat. The crew watched in bemused silence as he rowed back to the trading vessel, which immediately began to move away with surprising speed. "That was weird, right?" Usopp asked. "Not just me. Definitely weird," Chopper agreed. Robin carefully refolded the letter, her expression troubled. "We need to tell Luffy about this as soon as he returns." "If he returns," Nami muttered. "You know how time works differently when he's with Hancock." On the far side of Amazon Lily, in a secluded grove surrounded by ancient stone monoliths, Luffy stood with his eyes closed while Hancock circled him slowly. "Feel the emotions rising," her voice instructed, smooth and hypnotic. "Anger, fear, joy, sorrow, acknowledge each one, but do not let it consume you. Luffy's body glowed faintly with the 5 colors of his Admiral powers, each one brightening and dimming in response to the emotions flowing through him. For 3 days now, they had been working on emotional control, not suppressing feelings, but channeling them constructively. Your passion is your strength, Hancock continued, but unchecked, it makes your powers unstable. Find the calm center within the storm. Sweat beaded on Luffy's forehead as he struggled with the exercise. Memories flashed through his mind, Ace dying in his arms, his crew separated at Sabaody, Zoro injured by his own uncontrolled powers. With each painful recollection, the energies within him surged and writhed. Don't fight the feelings, Hancock corrected, noticing his tension. Accept them. Integrate them. Make them part of your strength. Luffy took a deep breath, shifting his approach. Instead of trying to calm the emotional storm, he embraced it, allowing the feelings to flow through him while maintaining his center. Gradually, the chaotic fluctuations in his powers stabilized. The 5 colors continued to glow but in a steady, rhythmic pattern rather than random flares. Good, Hancock approved, a rare warmth in her voice. Very good. Luffy opened his eyes, grinning. I didn't explode anything this time. Despite herself, Hancock smiled. His childlike enthusiasm remained endearing, even as he wielded powers that could reshape continents. You're making remarkable progress, she acknowledged. But controlling your powers under stress is the true test. You mean like combat? She nodded. Emotional control is easiest in calm moments. The real challenge comes when you're fighting for your life, or for those you care about. Luffy's expression turned serious. So I need combat training. Will you fight me? I will, Hancock agreed, but not alone. She clapped her hands, and from the surrounding jungle emerged a dozen of her strongest warriors, including her sisters Marigold and Sandersonia. You will face all of us, using only the powers you choose, while I create emotional complications. Emotional complications? A slightly mischievous smile touched Hancock's lips. You'll see. What followed was unlike any training Luffy had experienced before. As the Kuja warriors attacked from all sides, Hancock used a combination of her love fruit powers and carefully chosen words to trigger emotional responses, showing illusions of his crew in danger, reminding him of painful memories, even attempting to provoke his anger with taunts about his past failures. Through it all, Luffy fought defensively, using his Admiral powers in controlled bursts, ice to create barriers, gravity to deflect arrows, light to dodge, plant manipulation to entangle rather than harm. He struggled not just against physical opponents but against the emotional turbulence Hancock deliberately provoked. Several times, his control slipped, a flash of magma when anger spiked, a gravity pulse too strong when fear took hold. But each time, he recovered faster, found his center quicker. After hours of this grueling exercise, Hancock finally called a halt. The Kuja warriors, exhausted but impressed, bowed to Luffy before departing, leaving him alone with the Empress. You've improved significantly, she told him as they sat beneath a flowering tree to rest. Your recovery time after emotional triggers has decreased by half. Luffy leaned back against the trunk, physically and mentally drained. It's getting easier to feel the powers as parts of me, not separate things fighting for control. Hancock studied him thoughtfully. There's something different about you since you acquired these powers. A new awareness. You've always been intuitive, but now you seem wiser. I can feel more stuff, Luffy admitted. Not just physical things, but I don't know, deeper things. Connections between people. The flow of life. It's weird. The Admiral powers are changing you, Hancock observed. Not just your abilities, but your perceptions. Luffy frowned slightly. Is that bad? Not necessarily. But it is significant. She hesitated, then added more softly, I've noticed something else as well. When you use the life power, Ryukujyu's ability, the island responds differently to you than to anyone else who's ever visited. What do you mean? The sacred plants in our temple garden are blooming out of season. Animals that normally avoid humans are drawn to you. Last night, our shamans reported strange dreams of a great balance shifting. Her eyes met his directly. Something is happening, Luffy. Something beyond just you gaining new powers. Luffy nodded slowly. Blackbeard said something similar. About a prophecy and ancient weapons. Blackbeard is not to be trusted, Hancock said sharply. But that doesn't mean everything he says is a lie. She rose gracefully. Come. There's something I need to show you. She led him deeper into the island, to a part he hadn't visited before. The vegetation grew thicker, older, the trees towering hundreds of feet into the sky. Eventually, they reached a small clearing where an ancient stone structure stood, a circular arrangement of weathered pillars surrounding a central altar. The Void Century Calendar, Hancock explained. One of the few remaining in the world. Most were destroyed during the Great Purge. Luffy approached the stone circle cautiously. What does it do? It marks celestial alignments, stars, planets, cosmic events. According to our tribe's oral history, it was built to predict the convergence. The what now? A time when the barriers between dimensions weaken, allowing forces to flow between worlds. Hancock pointed to symbols carved into the central altar. Once every 1,000 years, the 5 elemental powers align, creating an opportunity for transformation. Luffy stared at the ancient carvings, recognizing symbols that resembled the very powers he now possessed. So it wasn't random. That weird sky-rip thing that gave me these powers, it was this convergence. Perhaps the beginning stages, Hancock agreed. But according to the calendar, the true convergence is still approaching. What you experienced may have been merely a precursor, a sign of what's to come. Luffy processed this information slowly. So what happens during the full convergence? Hancock's expression grew grave. Our legends say that the last time it occurred, an entire civilization was erased from history, what we now call the Void Century. The details were lost, but the warnings remain. When the 5 become one, the world shall be unmade and remade according to the vessel's will. The vessel? Luffy repeated, a chill running down his spine. You mean me? Before Hancock could respond, a commotion erupted from the direction of the palace. Shouts and the sounds of combat carried through the jungle. Something's wrong, Hancock said, instantly alert. We need to return. They ran through the forest, Luffy occasionally using his light powers to scout ahead through dense vegetation. As they neared the palace, the sounds of battle grew louder. Breaking through the tree line into the main courtyard, they found chaos, Kuja warriors engaged in fierce combat with a group of intruders. But these weren't marines or ordinary pirates. Their movements were too coordinated, too professional. Blackbeard's commanders, Luffy growled, recognizing several of the attackers. At the center of the courtyard stood a massive figure Luffy had never seen before, a new addition to Blackbeard's crew. The man stood nearly 12 feet tall, his body covered in what appeared to be constantly shifting metal plates. Around him lay several unconscious Kuja warriors, including Marigold. Empress. A wounded guard spotted them. They came from underwater. Some kind of submersible vessel. Where is Sandersonia? Hancock demanded, her voice cold with fury. The guard pointed toward the palace. Defending the archives. They're trying to steal the ancient texts. Hancock turned to Luffy. These are your enemies. Will you help us defeat them? Of course, Luffy replied without hesitation. His body began to glow as he prepared to unleash his powers. Wait, Hancock cautioned, placing a restraining hand on his arm. Remember your training. Control. Precision. These powers can level the island if unleashed carelessly. Luffy nodded, taking a deep breath to center himself. I'll handle Metal Guy. You get to your sister. They separated, Hancock racing toward the palace while Luffy approached the massive metal-shifting enemy, who was now advancing on a group of surrounded Kuja warriors. "Hey! Tin Can!" Luffy called out. "Looking for me?" The giant figure turned, revealing a face partially covered in the same shifting metal as his body. "Straw Hat Luffy," he rumbled in a voice that sounded like grinding gears. "The captain wants to speak with you." "Funny way of asking for a chat," Luffy replied, cracking his knuckles. "Breaking into someone's home, attacking their people. Just getting your attention." The metal man grinned, revealing teeth of gleaming steel. "I'm Alloy. Newest addition to the Blackbeard Pirates. And you're coming with me, conscious or not." Without warning, Alloy's arm transformed into a massive spiked mace that he swung directly at Luffy's head. The attack was blindingly fast for someone so large, but not fast enough. Luffy's body partially converted to light, allowing the mace to pass harmlessly through him. In the same fluid motion, he transformed his right arm into magma and struck Alloy's chest with a precisely controlled blow. To Luffy's surprise, instead of melting through the metal, his magma fist was repelled by a sudden transformation in Alloy's chest plates. "Sea Prism Alloy," the giant gloated. "One of my many metals. Your devil fruit powers can't penetrate it." "Good thing I've got options then," Luffy replied, immediately shifting tactics. He leapt backward, switching his right arm from magma to ice while simultaneously activating gravity manipulation with his left. The combination created a unique effect. Alloy found himself suddenly weightless, unable to maintain traction, while the ground beneath him froze into slick ice. As the giant flailed awkwardly in midair, Luffy followed up with a rubber-enhanced kick that connected solidly with Alloy's jaw, sending him spinning through several palace pillars. "Captain warned me you were tricky," Alloy growled as he climbed from the rubble, his metal body reconfiguring to repair damage. "But I came prepared." His right arm transformed again, this time into what appeared to be a cannon. Before Luffy could react, Alloy fired, not a conventional cannonball, but a net composed of fine sea prism stone mesh. Luffy's light transformation came an instant too late. The net enveloped him, the sea prism immediately weakening his powers. He crashed to the ground, momentarily vulnerable. Alloy approached, a triumphant grin on his metal face. "Not so impressive now, are you? Captain Blackbeard will be pleased." As the giant reached down to grab him, Luffy closed his eyes, forcing himself to remain calm despite the situation. The sea prism weakened his powers but didn't eliminate them entirely, not with his new level of control. Focusing intensely, he channeled a small but precise burst of Ryakuju's plant manipulation ability, not through the net, but into the stone courtyard beneath him. Tiny cracks appeared in the flagstones as plant tendrils pushed upward, growing at accelerated speed. Within seconds, the tendrils had wrapped around the sea prism net and began to pull it apart, strand by strand. "What the?" Alloy's eyes widened as Luffy's improvised countermeasure took effect. The moment a large enough opening appeared in the net, Luffy burst free, his body instantly regaining full power. Now it was his turn to grin. "My captain warned me about you too," he said. "But I came prepared." What followed was a demonstration of Luffy's new combat style, a fluid integration of his original rubber abilities with precisely applied Admiral powers. He didn't rely on raw force but on tactical application, using each power for its specific advantages against Alloy's transforming metal body. Ice to freeze joints when they shifted to sea prism. Gravity to disrupt balance when Alloy tried to ground himself. Light for speed and evasion. Plant manipulation to entangle and restrict. And when openings appeared, targeted magma strikes at non-sea prism sections. Throughout the battle, Luffy maintained the emotional control Hancock had been teaching him. Even when Alloy landed painful blows, even when the giant destroyed parts of the beautiful palace, Luffy kept his focus, never allowing anger or frustration to compromise his precision. Meanwhile, across the courtyard, other battles raged. Blackbeard's commanders had clearly come prepared, using specialized weapons and tactics against the Kuja warriors. But the women of Amazon Lily were far from helpless, their hockey-infused arrows and serpentine fighting style keeping the invaders at bay. Inside the palace archives, Hancock faced off against a slender, pale man with silver hair and eyes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "The texts belong to us," the man hissed, his fingers transformed into elongated claws that dripped with some kind of corrosive fluid. "The secrets of the convergence are Blackbeard's by right of discovery." "You discover nothing," Hancock replied coldly, her beauty undiminished by the fury in her eyes. "You steal. You corrupt. And now you trespass on sacred ground." With lightning speed, she launched a kick that would have turned an ordinary man to stone with her love fruit power. But this opponent was prepared, his body bending unnaturally to avoid her attack. "Sovereign hockey," he murmured, sounding almost impressed. "But even that won't save your precious archives." As they fought among the ancient scrolls and tablets, Sandersonia defended the most sacred texts, her snake form giving her the reach and flexibility to guard multiple sections simultaneously. Back in the courtyard, Luffy's battle with Alloy reached its climax. The metal giant, growing desperate as Luffy systematically countered his transformations, activated what appeared to be his ultimate form, a full-body conversion into a gleaming black metal unknown to Luffy. "Carbon-reinforced sea prism." Alloy roared, his voice reverberating metallically. "Not even admirals can penetrate this." Luffy paused, studying his opponent thoughtfully. "You're right. I probably can't break that shell." A slow smile spread across his face. "But I don't need to break it. I just need to move it." Before Alloy could respond, Luffy activated a full-body transformation that none of the Blackbeard pirates had anticipated, a perfect synchronization of all 5 Admiral powers simultaneously, something he'd never demonstrated publicly before. His body became a swirling harmony of magma, ice, light, gravity, and life force, not chaotic or conflicting, but perfectly balanced. The Kuja warriors and enemy pirates alike paused in their battles, awestruck by the display. "Harmonic convergence," Luffy said quietly, naming the technique for the first time. With deliberate calm, he extended both hands toward Alloy. The air between them seemed to warp and twist as multiple forms of energy interacted. The metal giant found himself caught in a sphere of altered reality, lifted by gravity manipulation, his molecular structure excited by light energy, thermal extremes from ice and magma creating expansion and contraction in his metal body, while life energy accelerated oxidation processes. Alloy didn't break. He didn't melt or freeze or shatter. Instead, he was simply moved. One moment he stood in the palace courtyard, the next, he was gone, transported a mile out to sea where Luffy had focused the combined spatial distortion of his powers. A distant splash confirmed the successful relocation. The remaining Blackbeard commanders, seeing their strongest fighter so effortlessly dispatched, immediately shifted to a strategic retreat. The pale man fighting Hancock in the archives suddenly disengaged, throwing down smoke bombs as cover. "This isn't over," he called out as he fled. "The texts speak truth, the vessel will fulfill the prophecy, whether he desires it or not." Within minutes, the invaders had retreated to their submersible vessel and disappeared beneath the waves, leaving the Kuja to tend their wounded and assess the damage. Luffy found Hancock helping an injured Sandersonia in the archive chamber. The Snake Princess had returned to human form, nursing a nasty wound to her shoulder. "We protected the most important texts," Sandersonia reported grimly. "But they managed to steal some of the convergence scrolls." Hancock's expression was troubled. "Then Blackbeard now has more pieces of the puzzle." "What puzzle?" Luffy asked. "What's in those scrolls that's so important?" "Instructions," Hancock replied. "On how to control the convergence. On how to use the vessel, to access the power of creation and destruction." A heavy silence fell over the chamber as the implications sank in. "We need to return to your ship," Hancock decided. "Your crew must be informed, and we need to make plans." She turned to her sister. Can you manage things here? Sonia nodded. Go. The island's defenses will be strengthened. This won't happen again. As they made their way back to the hidden cove where the Thousand Sunny waited, Luffy was unusually quiet, processing everything he'd learned and experienced. That new technique, Hancock finally said, breaking the silence. Harmonic convergence. It was impressive. It just felt right, Luffy replied. Like all the powers wanted to work together for once, instead of fighting for control. That's the breakthrough we've been working toward. She glanced at him with something like pride. You've mastered in days what should have taken years. Luffy shrugged. I had a good teacher. A faint blush colored Hancock's cheeks, quickly masked by her usual regal composure. The training isn't complete. Emotional control during a real crisis, when those you care about are truly in danger, that remains untested. I have a feeling I'll get plenty of opportunities for that test soon enough. They reached the cove to find the Thousand Sunny on high alert, the crew visibly relieved at Luffy's return. As they boarded, Nami immediately approached with the mysterious letter. We had a visitor, she explained, handing the message to Luffy. Very strange old man with an even stranger message. Luffy read the letter, his expression growing increasingly serious. When he finished, he looked up at his gathered crew. Looks like we've got a new destination. Temporal Isle. You know it? Nami asked, surprised. No, but Hancock might. He turned to the Pirate Empress. Ever heard of a Temple of Ages? To everyone's surprise, Hancock nodded slowly. It's mentioned in our oldest texts. A place outside of normal time, where all eras can be glimpsed simultaneously. She studied the letter again. This warning about a convergence matches our own records. And the one who has seen the end? Robin inquired. There are legends, Hancock replied cautiously, of a being who exists beyond conventional time. The Kuja call him Kronos, the Keeper of Ages. Great, Usopp muttered. More cryptic mysteries. Just what we needed. Luffy turned to Hancock. Will you come with us? We could use your help. The request clearly caught her off guard. The Pirate Empress rarely left her island, and never at the invitation of others. But after a moment's consideration, she nodded. The convergence concerns all worlds, including Amazon Lily. And your training remains incomplete. Her expression softened slightly. Besides, someone needs to ensure you don't destroy reality in a moment of emotional excess. It's settled then, Luffy declared. We set sail for Temporal Isle as soon as Hancock is ready. As preparations began for their departure, none of them noticed the small, ordinary-looking bird perched in a nearby tree, a bird whose eyes glowed with an unnatural purple light as it observed their every move before flying away toward the horizon. Miles away, aboard his flagship, Blackbeard gazed into a special den mushy that displayed what the possessed bird was seeing. Beside him stood the pale, silver-haired man from the archive raid. So they're seeking Kronos, the pale man observed. Unexpected, but potentially useful. How so, Epic? Blackbeard asked, using his commander's code name. Temporal Isle exists in a nexus point, a place where multiple realities converge. If Straw Hat learns to navigate it. Epic's colorless eyes gleamed with anticipation. He could unknowingly open the very doorway we seek. Blackbeard's rumbling laugh filled his cabin. Zihahaha. So we'll let them lead the way. Perfect. He turned to another figure lurking in the shadows. Prepare your special weapons. When they reach Temporal Isle, we'll be waiting. The shadowy figure nodded, stepping briefly into the light to reveal a face distorted by clockwork implants embedded in the flesh, mechanical eyes that constantly spun and recalibrated, a jaw reinforced with metal gears. Time is on our side, the cyborg whispered in a voice that seemed to echo from both past and future simultaneously. It always has been. The journey to Temporal Isle began under clear skies that soon gave way to increasingly strange weather phenomena. By the third day, the thousand sunnies sailed through patches of ocean where rain fell upward instead of down, where clouds formed impossible shapes, and where the sea itself occasionally flowed backward. The barriers are thinning, Hancock explained as they navigated these anomalies. The closer we get to Temporal Isle, the more pronounced the effects will become. On the fourth day, they encountered their first major obstacle, a marine blockade stretching across their projected path. 5 battleships arranged in formation, clearly waiting specifically for them. "They've anticipated our course," Robin observed from the crow's nest. "Someone must have informed them." "Blackbeard," Zoro growled. "He's using us as bait, letting the Marines weaken us before he makes his move." "I count at least 3 vice admirals on deck," Sanji reported, using a spyglass. "Plus what looks like a special weapons division. They're not taking any chances." Luffy stood at the bow, studying the blockade thoughtfully. In the past, he might have charged indirectly, confident in his ability to punch through any opposition. But his new powers required a more strategic approach. The collateral damage from a full-scale battle could be catastrophic. "We need to avoid a fight if possible," he decided, surprising some of his crew with his restraint. "Nami, are there any currents we could use to go around them?" Before she could answer, Hancock stepped forward. "There's another option. My ship approaches from the south, see there?" She pointed to the horizon where the distinctive serpent-headed vessel of the Kuja pirates had appeared. "I can create a diversion while you slip past." "That puts your people at risk," Luffy objected. Hancock's smile held a dangerous confidence. "The Marines still respect my warlord status, even after the system's dissolution. They won't fire on my ship without provocation. We'll parley, create confusion, give you time to pass." After brief deliberation, they agreed to the plan. Using a combination of Nami's weather manipulation, Frankie's engineering, and Luffy's gravity control to lighten the ship, they would attempt to slip past the blockade while Hancock distracted the Marine leadership. The plan began perfectly. As Hancock's ship approached the Marine blockade with flags of parley raised, the Sunny circled wide, using a sudden fog bank created by Nami to mask their approach. "They're taking the bait," Usopp reported, watching through his goggles as Hancock was escorted aboard the lead Marine vessel. All attention is on the Kuja ship. With Luffy maintaining a gravity field that reduced the Sunny's weight and water displacement, they ghosted silently through the outer edge of the blockade. For a few tense minutes, it seemed they would pass undetected. Then disaster struck. A lone Marine lookout, scanning with a specialized heat detection Den Mushi, spotted their outline through the fog. Alarm bells rang out across the blockade. "We've been made!" Frankie shouted, immediately dropping the stealth modifications and preparing the ship's weapons. "Hold on tight." The nearest Marine vessel opened fire, massive cannons targeting the Sunny with frightening accuracy. Luffy reacted instinctively, creating an ice shield to intercept the cannonballs. "So much for avoiding a fight," Zoro muttered, drawing his swords as Marine soldiers began launching boarding craft. Hancock still on their command ship, Robin reminded them. "We need to be careful." Luffy nodded, quickly formulating a plan. "Frankie, get us out of here, full speed. Everyone else, defensive positions only. No unnecessary damage." As the Sunny accelerated, breaking from the fog bank into open water, they could see the chaos unfolding on the Marine command ship. Hancock had clearly realized their cover was blown and was creating her own diversion. Marines were running in confusion, some turned to stone by her powers, others simply incapacitated. "She's holding her own," Nami observed with grudging admiration. "But we can't leave her behind." "We won't," Luffy assured her. "Zoro, Sanji, cover the ship. I'm going to get Hancock." Before anyone could object, Luffy activated his light transformation and shot across the water toward the Marine command vessel, moving at speeds that made him nearly invisible to the naked eye. He materialized on the command ship's deck amidst a group of startled Marines, immediately creating a targeted gravity field that sent them flying without causing structural damage to the ship. Navigating through the chaos, he found Hancock on the upper deck, facing off against a vice admiral. "Your alliance with Straw Hat confirms you as an enemy of justice," the vice admiral was saying, his hands transformed into gleaming blades, clearly a devil fruit user. "I ally with whom I choose," Hancock replied coldly. "Your justice means nothing to the Kuja." Luffy landed beside her. "Need a hand?" Despite the situation, Hancock's expression warmed slightly at his arrival. "I had things under control." "I know. But our ride's leaving." He jerked his thumb toward the Sunny, now exchanging fire with two pursuing battleships. The vice admiral attacked without warning, his blade hand slicing through the air with deadly precision. Luffy parried with an ice-transformed arm, the contact creating a shower of frozen particles. "Straw Hat Luffy," the vice admiral growled. "You have no idea what forces you're meddling with." The admiral sent a message: "Stand down. Surrender yourself for study and containment. It's the only way to prevent catastrophe." "Not interested in being anyone's lab rat," Luffy replied, maintaining his defensive stance. "And I'm handling these powers just fine." "Are you?" The vice admiral's expression became oddly knowing. "Have you noticed the environmental anomalies? The thinning barriers between realities? Your very existence in this state threatens the world's stability." Luffy hesitated, recalling the strange weather phenomena they'd encountered. "What are you talking about?" Taking advantage of his momentary distraction, the vice admiral launched a surprise attack, not at Luffy, but at Hancock. Only her exceptional reflexes saved her from being impaled, though the blade still sliced across her shoulder, drawing blood. The sight of Hancock injured triggered exactly what she had been training Luffy to control, a surge of protective rage that threatened to destabilize his powers. For a critical moment, the five admiral energies within him roiled chaotically, responding to his emotions rather than his will. Hancock, despite her wound, immediately recognized the danger. "Luffy. Center yourself. Remember the training." Her voice cut through his emotional response. Using the techniques she had taught him, Luffy quickly regained control, channeling the emotional energy into focused power rather than chaotic release. "Thanks for the reminder," he said to both Hancock and the vice admiral. "Let me show you what I've learned." What followed was a precise demonstration of Luffy's new combat style, not overwhelming force, but tactical application. He used gravity to disarm the vice admiral, light to evade counterattacks, ice to temporarily immobilize rather than injure, and carefully controlled plant manipulation to bind his opponent. Within moments, the marine officer found himself completely restrained by vines growing from the deck itself, his devil fruit blades rendered useless. "That was efficient," Hancock observed, impressed by Luffy's restraint. "I'm trying this new thing where I don't destroy entire islands while fighting," Luffy replied with a grin. He glanced at her injured shoulder. "You okay?" "It's nothing," she dismissed, though the wound was clearly painful. "We should go." Luffy nodded, then turned back to the restrained vice admiral. "Tell your bosses I'm not the threat. Whatever's causing these weird time distortions, that's what they should be worried about." The vice admiral's expression remained defiant, but something in his eyes suggested Luffy's words had registered. Taking advantage of the momentary lull in the battle, Luffy scooped Hancock into his arms, ignoring her startled protest. "Hang on tight." Activating his light transformation, he launched them both from the marine vessel, streaking across the water toward the retreating Sunny. Behind them, the blockade fell into disarray as conflicting orders and Hancock's lingering love-love effects created confusion among the marine ranks. They landed on the Sunny's deck as Frankie executed a series of evasive maneuvers, putting distance between them and their pursuers. Chopper immediately rushed to attend to Hancock's injury, while Nami redirected their course to account for the delay. "What about my ship and warriors?" Hancock asked once her wound was treated. "Already moving to the rendezvous point," Robin assured her, having used her powers to communicate with the Kuja vessel during the chaos. They'll meet us beyond the Marine patrol zone. As the immediate danger passed and the Marine blockade faded from view, the crew gathered on deck to assess their situation. The encounter had been narrowly avoided becoming a major battle, thanks largely to Luffy's restrained approach. "You've really gotten a handle on those powers," Frankie observed, clearly impressed. Few months ago, that Vice Admiral would be fishing his battleship out of the stratosphere. Luffy shrugged. No point causing more damage than necessary. Besides, what he said about environmental anomalies got me thinking. About what? Nami asked. About whether these powers are causing problems just by existing in me. He looked toward the horizon, where strange light patterns had begun to appear in the sky. What if the Marines are right? What if I'm somehow making things worse? The powers aren't the problem, Hancock interjected, wincing slightly as Chopper finished bandaging her shoulder. It's the imbalance they represent. According to the ancient texts, the 5 elemental forces should remain distributed, not concentrated in a single vessel. But they are concentrated in Luffy, Robin pointed out. And if what both you and this mysterious messenger say is true, a convergence is approaching that will only intensify the effects. Which is why we need to reach Temporal Isle, Hancock concluded. The Temple of Ages may provide answers that aren't available elsewhere. Luffy nodded decisively. Then we keep going. How much further, Nami? The navigator consulted her charts, frowning slightly. That's the strange part. According to the messenger's directions, we should be getting close, but there's nothing on any map showing an island in this region. The old man said it appears only when it needs to be found, Chopper remembered. So how do we find something that isn't there yet? Usopp wondered aloud. The answer came in an unexpected form. As the sun began to set, the strange lights on the horizon intensified, forming what appeared to be a gateway of shimmering energy directly in their path. What the hell is that? Zoro demanded, hand instinctively moving to his swords. Luffy stepped to the bow, staring at the phenomenon with focused concentration. As he did, the 5 Admiral powers within him responded, each glowing in sequence. It's calling to me, he said quietly. The powers, they recognize it. Be careful, Luffy, Robin cautioned. It could be a trap. I don't think so, he replied, still focused on the gateway. It feels right. Like this is exactly where we're supposed to be. As they drew closer to the shimmering portal, its nature became clearer. It wasn't simply a light show, it was a literal tear in reality, revealing glimpses of landscapes and seascapes that couldn't possibly exist in their world. Incredible, Robin breathed, her scholarly curiosity overcoming her caution. It appears to be a dimensional gateway, a passage between different planes of existence. Or different times, Hancock suggested. The Temple of Ages exists beyond conventional time. This may be the only way to reach it. Before they could debate further, the gateway began to expand, its edges stretching outward until it engulfed the entire visible horizon. There was no avoiding it now, they were committed to whatever path it offered. Everyone brace yourselves. Nami called out as the Sunny's bow touched the shimmering barrier. The sensation of passing through was indescribable, like moving through layers of reality, each one slightly different from the last. Colors shifted, physical sensations altered, even the flow of time seemed to stutter and jump. When the disorientation passed, they found themselves sailing in waters unlike any they had ever encountered. The sea itself was crystalline, so clear that they could see hundreds of fathoms down to an ocean floor covered in structures that appeared to be the ruins of an advanced civilization. The sky above held multiple suns of different colors, casting prismatic light across a landscape that defied conventional geography. In the distance stood an island that seemed to shift and change even as they watched, parts of it ancient and crumbling, other sections gleaming with futuristic architecture, all somehow coexisting in the same space. Temporal Isle, Hancock whispered, her usual composure momentarily overcome by awe. The place where all times exist simultaneously. At the island's center, rising above the chronological chaos, stood a massive structure that remained constant while everything around it fluctuated, a temple of black stone, its architecture both ancient and timeless, crowned with a dome that reflected the multiple suns like a cosmic mirror. The Temple of Ages, Robin identified, her voice hushed with reverence. As they approached the island's shore, they noticed something unexpected, a dock that appeared perfectly maintained, with what looked like an anticipatory welcoming committee gathered at its end. "Someone's expecting us," Zoro observed grimly, still not trusting this strange place. When they drew close enough to make out details, they saw that the welcoming committee consisted of a single figure, the same elderly messenger who had delivered the cryptic letter. "Welcome to Temporal Isle," the old man called as they cautiously docked. "Or perhaps welcome back. Time is somewhat negotiable here." "Who are you really?" Luffy asked directly as they disembarked. "And why did you bring us here?" The old man smiled enigmatically. "I am but a humble servant of Kronos, master of the temple. And you were brought here because it is necessary, for you, for the world, and for the balance of all things." "The convergence," Hancock stated rather than asked. The messenger nodded. "The symptoms grow worse by the day. Reality fractures. Dimensions bleed into one another. And at the center of it all," he fixed his gaze on Luffy, "the vessel who carries what should not be united. These powers came to me," Luffy said defensively. "I didn't ask for them." "No one is blaming you, Straw Hat Luffy. But intention and responsibility are different matters." The old man gestured toward the temple. "Come. My master awaits. He will explain what must be done." As they followed their guide up a path that seemed to shift between different eras with each step, ancient stone giving way to futuristic material, then back again, the surrounding landscape revealed the true nature of Temporal Isle. It wasn't simply an island with mixed architecture, it was a place where multiple time streams coexisted simultaneously. In one section, they glimpsed what appeared to be the island's distant past, primitive structures and ancient peoples going about their lives. In another, a version that might be centuries in the future, advanced technology and unrecognizable beings. This place exists in all times at once, Robin realized, fascinated despite the disorienting experience. Past, present, future, all happening simultaneously. Precisely, their guide confirmed. Temporal Isle serves as an anchor point, a nexus where the time stream can be observed and, when necessary, influenced. "Influenced how?" Nami asked suspiciously. The old man's smile remained cryptic. "That is for Kronos to explain." As they approached the temple itself, its true scale became apparent. What had appeared large from a distance was in fact enormous, a structure that dwarfed even the tallest buildings in the world they knew. Its black stone surface was covered in intricate carvings that depicted events spanning what appeared to be the entire history of their world, including some they recognized from their own adventures. "This place has been watching us," Sanji murmured, spotting a carving that unmistakably showed their crew at Eni's lobby. "It watches all significant nexus points in time," the guide explained. "Moments where choices changed the course of history." The massive doors of the temple opened silently as they approached, revealing a vast circular chamber within. The interior was even more impressive than the exterior, a massive domed space whose walls were lined with what appeared to be windows into different eras of history. Through one, they could see ancient civilizations rising; through another, great wars that had shaped the world; through others, glimpses of possible futures, some bright, others apocalyptic. At the chamber's center stood a raised dais, and upon it, a figure unlike any they had encountered before. Humanoid in general shape, but clearly not human, tall and willowy, with skin that shifted colors like opalescent crystal, and eyes that contained swirling galaxies rather than conventional pupils. "I am Kronos," the being said, its voice somehow sounding young and ancient simultaneously, masculine and feminine and neither. "Guardian of time, keeper of ages. And you, Monkey D. Luffy, are a problem." Luffy, never one to be intimidated even by cosmic entities, stepped forward. I've been getting that a lot lately. Mind telling me exactly what kind of problem? Kronos gestured, and the air between them shimmered, forming a three-dimensional model of what appeared to be interconnected realities. The multiverse exists in delicate balance, the entity explained. Different dimensions, different timelines, all connected yet separate. The 5 elemental powers you now possess, fire, ice, light, gravity, and life, are fundamental forces meant to remain distributed across these realities. But the rift gave them all to me, Luffy stated. Yes. An unprecedented concentration of power in a single vessel. Kronos moved a finger, and the model showed a bright point of light disrupting the harmonious flow of the multiverse visualization. This concentration creates instability. The barriers between dimensions weaken. Time itself becomes flexible. The strange weather phenomena, Robin realized. The impossible occurrences we've been witnessing, they're symptoms of this instability. Correct. And they will worsen as the true convergence approaches, a moment when all dimensions align, all barriers temporarily dissolve. Kronos' galaxy eyes fixed on Luffy. When that moment comes, the vessel, you, will have the power to reshape reality itself. To unmake and remake according to your will. A heavy silence fell over the chamber as the implications sank in. I don't want that kind of power, Luffy said finally. I just want to be Pirate King, not, whatever this is. Your desires are irrelevant, Kronos replied, not unkindly. The power is within you. When the convergence peaks, you will use it, consciously or unconsciously. The only question is how. Can't you just take the powers back? Chopper suggested. Undo whatever happened. Kronos shook its head. The powers have integrated with his essence. Removing them forcibly would destroy him, and potentially the reality he inhabits. The entity paused. However, there is another solution. A ritual of redistribution. What kind of ritual? Hancock asked, her protective instinct evident in her tone. One that would allow Monkey D. Luffy to safely channel the excess powers back into the multiverse, restoring balance while retaining his life and his original abilities. Kronos gestured again, and one section of the chamber wall transformed into a detailed illustration of an elaborate ritual circle. It must be performed at the moment of convergence, when the barriers are thinnest. Luffy studied the illustration carefully. And if I do this ritual thing, everything goes back to normal. The weird weather stops. No reality remaking. The balance would be restored, Kronos confirmed. You would retain your rubber powers as they are intrinsic to you, but the Admiral abilities would return to their proper distribution across the multiverse. Sounds straightforward enough, Frankie commented. When's this convergence supposed to happen? 3 days from now, Kronos replied. At the precise moment when all 5 cosmic bodies align. The entity pointed to the temple dome, where a celestial map showed 5 planets slowly moving into conjunction. Luffy nodded, his decision already made. Then we'll do it. I never asked for these powers anyway. It cannot be that simple, Robin interjected, her natural skepticism asserting itself. There must be complications, risks you haven't mentioned. Kronos' expression remained unreadable, but something in its galaxy eyes shifted. You are perceptive, Nico Robin. Yes, there are risks. The ritual requires perfect execution at the exact moment of alignment. Furthermore, there are others who would prevent its completion. Blackbeard, Zoro guessed. Marshal D. Teach seeks the power of the convergence for himself, Kronos confirmed. He has learned of ancient methods to extract and transfer the 5 powers at the moment of alignment. And the world government? Sanji asked. They seem pretty invested in stopping Luffy too. Their knowledge is incomplete but dangerous. They believe destruction is the only solution, eliminate the vessel to prevent catastrophe. Kronos turned back to Luffy. Which brings us to the greatest risk of all, emotional stability during the ritual. Any extreme emotional state at the crucial moment could disrupt the process, with unpredictable consequences. Hancock stepped forward. That is why I am here. I've been training Luffy in emotional control specifically for such circumstances. The Love Empress, Kronos acknowledged with what might have been respect. Your assistance will be valuable. But be warned, what approaches will test even your considerable abilities. Before further questions could be asked, the temple suddenly trembled, its structure momentarily phasing between different temporal states. We are discovered, Kronos announced, a note of concern in its otherworldly voice. Sooner than anticipated. Discovered by whom? Usopp asked nervously. As if in answer, one of the temporal windows in the chamber wall darkened, then resolved into an image of the sea surrounding Temporal Isle. 3 ships were approaching, Blackbeard's fleet, having somehow followed them through the dimensional gateway. How did they find us so quickly? Nami demanded. Kronos's expression darkened. Teach has acquired technology from a possible future, devices that allow tracking through dimensional barriers. He must have placed such a device on your vessel before you departed Amazon Lily. Luffy's mind flashed back to the attack on Hancock's Island, the strange metal man, the pale commander searching the archives. It had been a distraction, a cover for placing some tracking device on the Sunny during the chaos. How long before they reached the temple, he asked, already moving toward the exit. Hours at most, Kronos replied. But time here is fluid. We can prepare. Then let's prepare, Luffy decided. If Blackbeard wants these powers so badly, he'll have to go through me to get them. And us, Zoro added, his hand on his swords. All of us, Nami affirmed, her climax already in hand. As his crew voiced their support, Luffy felt a surge of determination. Whatever cosmic responsibility had been thrust upon him, whatever powers now resided within him, he wouldn't face it alone. He had his crew, he had Hancock, and now he had knowledge of what needed to be done. 3 days until the convergence. 3 days to prepare for a battle that would determine not just their fate, but the fate of reality itself. And somewhere out there, Marshal Teach was coming, driven by an ambition that threatened everything. The stage was set for a confrontation unlike any they had faced before, a battle for the very fabric of existence. Chapter 3, Balance of the Ages. The Temple of Ages hummed with ancient energy as Luffy stood at its highest point, watching Blackbeard's ships approach through the crystalline waters of Temporal Isle. The 5 suns cast overlapping shadows behind him, each one a different color corresponding to the Admiral powers flowing through his body. They'll be here by nightfall, Zoro said, joining his captain at the observation platform. If nightfall even means anything in this place. Luffy nodded, his expression unusually serious. Kronos says time works differently here. Could be minutes for us, hours for them. Convenient. Yeah. Almost too convenient. Zoro raised an eyebrow, surprised by Luffy's skepticism. You don't trust the time god? I don't know what to trust anymore. Luffy's hands glowed faintly as he flexed them, the powers cycling beneath his skin. Everyone wants something from me now. The world government. Blackbeard. Even Kronos. What do you want? Zoro asked simply. The question hung in the air as Luffy stared at the approaching ships. Finally, he sighed. I just wanted adventure. To be free. To become Pirate King. He laughed, but it lacked his usual carefree spirit. Guessed the universe had other plans. Since when does Monkey D. Luffy let anyone else decide his path? Zoro challenged. God, government, or otherwise. That brought a genuine smile to Luffy's face. Good point. Below them, the Straw Hats and their allies prepared for the coming confrontation. Frankie and Usopp worked on fortifying the temple's entrance, rigging traps and defensive positions. Robin and Hancock pored over ancient texts with Kronos, studying the ritual that would allegedly restore balance to the multiverse. Nami, Chopper, Brook, and Sanji organized supplies and escape routes, planning for all contingencies. "Come on," Luffy said, turning from the vista. Hancock said she wanted to run through the ritual once more before Blackbeard shows up. They descended through the impossible architecture of the temple, staircases that somehow connected rooms that shouldn't have been adjacent, corridors that shifted between different architectural styles as they walked. The place defied conventional physics, existing simultaneously in multiple time periods. In the central chamber, Robin looked up from an ancient scroll as they entered. "Perfect timing. We've decoded the final elements of the ritual." "And?" Luffy prompted. "It's complicated," she admitted. "The redistribution requires you to consciously separate each Admiral power and channel it into specific cosmic conduits." She gestured to 5 crystalline pillars arranged around the ritual circle. Each pillar corresponds to one of the powers. Hancock approached, her regal bearing unchanged despite the gravity of their situation. "The challenge will be maintaining perfect emotional equilibrium throughout the process. Any spike in emotion could disrupt the flow of energies." "That's where you come in, right?" Luffy asked. "Yes. I'll guide you through the meditative state we've practiced." Her expression softened slightly. "But the final control must come from within you." Kronos drifted into view, its opalescent form shifting colors as it moved. "There is one detail we have not yet discussed." The cosmic entity's galaxy eyes fixed on Luffy. "The ritual will drain your life force significantly. You will survive, but you will be weakened, perhaps for months afterward." "You're just mentioning this now." Zoro growled, hand moving instinctively to his swords. It was necessary to ensure Monkey D. Luffy's decision came from genuine desire to restore balance, not fear of personal consequence, Kronos replied without apology. Luffy shrugged. "Doesn't change anything. I'm still doing it. Even knowing you will be vulnerable to your enemies afterward." Kronos pressed. "The world government? Blackbeard? Other emperors who might seize the opportunity?" "My crew has my back," Luffy said with simple confidence. "Always have, always will." As preparations continued, Nami entered the chamber with urgent news. "Blackbeard's fleet has accelerated. They'll reach the island within the hour." "Impossible," Kronos stated. "The temporal currents around the isle should prevent such rapid approach." "Well, they found a way around that," Nami replied, unimpressed with the deity's certainty. "And that's not all. Marine vessels have appeared on the opposite side of the island." "The world government found us too?" Sanji asked, joining the conversation. "Looks like Fujitora's squadron," Nami confirmed. "At least 3 battleships." Luffy turned to Kronos. "You said we had 3 days until the convergence. Can we still complete the ritual if we have to fight first?" The entity's form flickered momentarily. "The alignment is accelerating. The concentration of power within you acts as a catalyst, drawing the cosmic bodies together faster than anticipated." "How long?" Robin demanded. 12 hours. Perhaps less." The news sent a ripple of tension through the group. 12 hours to prepare for and perform a complex ritual while defending against attacks from 2 powerful forces. "We need to split up," Zoro decided. "Some of us hold off Blackbeard, some handle the Marines, while Luffy prepares for the ritual." "I'm not hiding while everyone else fights," Luffy objected. "Not asking you to hide," Zoro countered. "Asking you to focus on the most important task. You're the only one who can perform this ritual." "He's right," Hancock agreed. "Your priority must be maintaining the emotional control and energy balance necessary for the ceremony." Before Luffy could respond, a tremendous explosion shook the temple. Dust rained from the ancient ceiling as everyone braced themselves. "They're here already!" Chopper exclaimed. Frankie's voice came through a baby den mushy. "Blackbeard's commanders are hitting the south entrance. Some kind of time distortion weapons. They're moving too fast to track." Another explosion rocked the structure, this one from the opposite direction. Marines at the north approach, Brook reported through a second den mushi. Vice Admiral Rance leading the charge with some kind of anti-devil fruit technology. Luffy's fists clenched, his body instinctively beginning to glow. With combined Admiral powers. I need to help them. No. Hancock placed a restraining hand on his arm. This is exactly what both forces want, to provoke you into action, destabilize your emotional state before the ritual. She's right, Robin added. We can handle the initial assault. You focus on preparing for the ceremony. Luffy looked torn, the powers within him surging in response to his protective instincts. The floor beneath his feet cracked slightly as gravity fluctuated around him. Trust your crew, Zoro said quietly. Like you always have. After a moment of internal struggle, Luffy nodded. All right. But if things get bad, really bad, you call me. Deal, Zoro agreed, already heading for the door. Sanji, Usopp, with me, will take Blackbeard's forces. Nami, Brook, Chopper, support the North defense against the Marines. I will assist against the world government, Robin volunteered. My abilities are well suited to their organized tactics. As the crew mobilized, Frankie's voice came through the den mushi again. Hey, guys. You might want to hurry. Blackbeard just showed up himself, and he's got some weird tech strapped to his chest that's giving me the creeps. Zoro exchanged one final look with Luffy before rushing off with his team. The chamber suddenly felt emptier, the weight of what was to come settling heavily on those who remained. We should begin preparations, Kronos advised, gesturing to the ritual circle. The alignment progresses faster than anticipated. As Hancock and Kronos guided Luffy through the initial meditative techniques, Robin lingered a moment longer, studying the cosmic entity with sharp eyes. You knew this would happen, she said quietly. The accelerated timeline. The converging attacks. You planned for this. Kronos' galaxy eyes revealed nothing. Time is my domain, Nico Robin. I see all possibilities. Including the one where Luffy fails, she pressed. Especially that one, the entity replied. Now go. Your friends need you. With one last suspicious glance, Robin departed to join the defense. As soon as she was gone, Kronos turned its attention fully to Luffy and Hancock. We must proceed quickly, the entity instructed. The ritual requires precise alignment of your internal energies with the cosmic forces. Luffy nodded, settling into the center of the ritual circle. Let's do this. The temple's southern entrance had become a battleground. Massive stone blocks lay shattered across the courtyard as Blackbeard's commanders unleashed devastating attacks against the defenders. Zoro found himself facing the metal-shifting giant from Amazon Lily, Alloy, who had somehow gained new abilities since their last encounter. Round 2, Roronoa, the giant bellowed, his body now featuring what appeared to be chronometer mechanisms embedded in the metal. This time, I'm temporally enhanced. Still just metal to be cut, Zoro replied calmly, drawing all three swords. Alloy laughed, then suddenly blurred, moving at impossible speed as his body temporally accelerated. Zoro barely managed to block the first attack, the impact sending him skidding backward. Nearby, Sanji faced off against the pale, silver-haired commander they had encountered in Hancock's archives. Up close, his appearance was even more unsettling, skin so pale it was almost translucent, revealing clock-like mechanisms pulsing beneath. Epic, at your service, the man introduced himself with a mocking bow. Timekeeper of the Blackbeard Pirates. Don't care, Sanji replied, igniting his leg with flames. You're in our way. Epic smiled, revealing teeth that ticked like second hands. Such limited perspective. I exist in multiple moments simultaneously. To demonstrate, he suddenly split into 3 identical versions of himself, past, present, and future forms all attacking Sanji from different angles. Further along the battlefront, Usopp found himself pinned down by sniper fire from a Blackbeard commander who seemed able to predict exactly where he would move before he even decided. "This is insane!" Usopp shouted into his den mushi as he rolled behind a fallen column. "They've all got some kind of time-based abilities." "Kronos warned us about this," Robin's voice replied. "Blackbeard has acquired technology from potential futures, devices that manipulate temporal flow." "Great. How do we fight that?" Sanji demanded, barely avoiding another multi-temporal attack. "Time is still bound by physical laws," Robin advised. "Look for the devices they're using. Destroy those, and their advantages should disappear." Zoro narrowed his focus, studying Alloy's movements. There, at the center of the giant's chest, a pulsing mechanism that glowed briefly each time he accelerated. That was the target. Onigiri. Zoro called out his attack, but instead of aiming for a vital spot, he focused all three blades on the temporal device. The precision strike connected, slicing through metal and machinery alike. The effect was immediate. Alloy's movements returned to normal speed, his temporal advantage neutralized. Without his time manipulation, he was still formidable but no longer untouchable. "My chronometer," the giant roared in outrage. "Do you have any idea how rare that technology is?" "Don't know, don't care," Zoro replied, pressing his advantage with a flurry of strikes that drove the metal man backward. Observing Zoro's success, Sanji adjusted his strategy against Epic. The time manipulator's advantage came from the clockwork visible beneath his skin, not external technology, but implants throughout his body. "This might get messy," Sanji muttered to himself, focusing his observation haki to identify the largest concentration of temporal machinery in Epic's chest. With blinding speed, Sanji launched into a spinning kick sequence, each strike precisely targeted at the commander's implanted technology. Konkasei chronograph. The first kick connected solidly, shattering several of the visible timepieces beneath Epic's skin. The effect was dramatic. Two of his temporal duplicates flickered and destabilized, their movements becoming erratic. "Impossible!" Epic gasped, his carefully orchestrated temporal attack falling into disarray. "No one has ever disrupted my time stream." "First time for everything," Sanji replied, following up with a barrage of kicks that further damaged the commander's implants. As the Straw Hats adapted to their opponent's abilities, the tide of battle began to shift. But the real threat had yet to show himself. "Where's Blackbeard?" Zoro called out, finishing his fight with a decisive blow that left Alloy unconscious in a heap of damaged metal. The answer came in the form of a massive tremor that shook the entire temple complex, the unmistakable signature of the tremor fruit. The central chamber. Usopp realized in horror. "He's bypassed our defenses. He must have used the commanders as a distraction while he found another way in," Sanji concluded, delivering a final kick that rendered Epic unconscious. Zoro was already running toward the temple interior. "Warn the others." Blackbeard's headed straight for Luffy. At the northern entrance, the marine assault proceeded with military precision. Vice Admiral Rance coordinated from the front lines, directing squads equipped with specialized anti-devil fruit weaponry. "Remember your objective," he shouted to his forces. "Secure the temple and neutralize Straw Hat Luffy. This is about world security, not personal glory." Robin observed from a concealed position, her crossed arms allowing her to sprout eyes and ears throughout the battlefield. Unlike Blackbeard's chaotic attack, the Marines moved with disciplined purpose, which made them predictable. "They're splitting into 3 groups," she reported to Nami through a den mushi. "The main force is heading for the east corridor, while smaller teams take the underground passage and the roof access." "Trying to surround us," Nami concluded. "Chopper, can you and Brook handle the roof team? I'll take the underground passage." "Leave it to us." Chopper confirmed, already shifting to his guard point to bounce up the temple's exterior wall, Brook following with his soul's supernatural lightness. Nami positioned herself at the hidden entrance to the underground passage, climate tacked at the ready. As soon as the first Marine scouts appeared, she unleashed a precision thunderbolt that incapacitated them without causing structural damage to the ancient tunnels. Robin focused on the main force, using her flower fruit powers to create cascading obstacles, hands sprouting from walls to trip running soldiers, arms emerging from the floor to grab ankles, eyes watching every move to anticipate their strategies. Despite these efforts, Vice Admiral Rance pressed forward with determination. The seasoned Marine officer carried what appeared to be a modified sea prism stone weapon, a staff that emitted a field which weakened devil fruit powers in its vicinity. "Nico Robin," he called out, somehow sensing her presence despite her concealment. "The world government recognizes the Straw Hats aren't the primary threat here. Surrender Monkey D. Luffy for the ritual, and we guarantee your crew's safety." Robin materialized a mouth near his ear. "Bold of you to offer guarantees while invading sacred ground with weapons drawn. We're trying to prevent universal collapse." Rance insisted. "Our scientists have confirmed what's happening. The concentration of powers in Straw Hat is destabilizing reality itself." "Then our goals align," Robin replied coolly. "Luffy is already preparing for a ritual to redistribute the powers safely." This gave Rance pause. What ritual? Under whose guidance? The temple's guardian. Kronos. The Vice Admiral's expression changed dramatically. "Kronos? You fool. That entity isn't." His warning was cut short by a thunderous explosion from deep within the temple, the same tremor that had alerted the southern defenders to Blackbeard's true objective. What was that? Rance demanded. Blackbeard, Robin realized, her eyes widening. He's reached the central chamber. To her surprise, the Vice Admiral immediately redirected his forces. "All units, new priority. Intercept Marshal D. Teach before he reaches the ritual site. Move." "Why the sudden cooperation?" Robin asked suspiciously. "Because if Blackbeard interferes with an active temporal ritual, the consequences could annihilate reality as we know it," Rance explained grimly. "Whatever our differences with pirates, preventing that takes precedence." Robin studied him briefly, then nodded. "Follow me. I know the fastest route to the central chamber." In the ritual chamber, Luffy sat cross-legged at the center of an intricate circle of glowing symbols, his eyes closed in meditation. The 5 Admiral powers cycled visibly through his body in controlled, rhythmic waves, each one flowing momentarily to the surface before subsiding in perfect harmony. Hancock knelt beside him, her hands positioned over his temples, guiding his emotional state with subtle applications of her unique haki. Around them, Kronos moved in complex patterns, its opalescent form leaving trails of light that connected to the 5 crystalline pillars surrounding the ritual circle. "The cosmic alignment accelerates," the entity announced. "We must begin the redistribution sequence earlier than planned." "Is he ready?" Hancock asked, concern evident in her voice. "He must be," Kronos replied. "The window of opportunity narrows." Luffy opened his eyes, which glowed with the combined colors of all 5 powers. "I'm ready." The ritual began with a low humming that seemed to emanate from the temple itself. The crystalline pillars pulsed in sequence, each one drawing forth the corresponding Admiral power from Luffy's body in controlled streams of energy. First came the magma, Akainu's power flowing out in ribbons of molten light toward the red crystal. Next, ice, Akiji's ability streaming like frost-laden wind to the blue pillar. Then light, gravity, and finally the green energy of life force, each finding its proper conduit. The process was beautiful but clearly taxing. Sweat beaded on Luffy's forehead as he maintained the delicate balance required to separate powers that had become deeply integrated with his being. "Steady," Hancock murmured, her own concentration intense as she helped him navigate the emotional currents. "Remember your center. These powers are not you, they flow through you." "Something's pushing back," Luffy managed through gritted teeth. "Like they don't want to leave." "The powers have developed a symbiotic relationship with your life force," Kronos explained, its form growing brighter as the ritual progressed. This resistance is expected. The chamber began to tremble slightly, the cosmic energies building as more power transferred from Luffy to the crystals. Outside, the 5 sons of Temporal Owl moved visibly closer to alignment, their light converging toward the temple dome. Almost, there. Luffy gasped, his body now glowing almost painfully bright as the final portions of each power prepared to depart. That's when the chamber doors exploded inward. Marshal Teach, Blackbeard himself, strode through the dust and debris, flanked by 2 commanders they hadn't seen before. On his chest sat an elaborate device composed of gears, crystals, and what appeared to be pieces of an ancient poneglyph. Zihahaha. Right on schedule. Blackbeard's voice boomed through the chamber. The ritual of redistribution, exactly as the ancient texts described. Hancock immediately moved to intercept, placing herself between Blackbeard and Luffy. You will not interfere. The cosmic balance must be restored. Oh, I'm all for cosmic balance, Blackbeard replied with a malicious grin. I just have different ideas about where these powers should be redistributed. He tapped the device on his chest. Specifically, right here. Kronos drifted forward, its form flickering with what might have been anger. Mortal fool. You cannot comprehend the forces you seek to manipulate. Oh, I comprehend plenty, timekeeper. Blackbeard's eyes narrowed. Including what you really are. Before anyone could react, one of Blackbeard's commanders activated a strange device that emitted a pulse of energy directly at Kronos. The entity's form destabilized dramatically, its opalescent colors separating into distinct layers that revealed a core of darkness within. What are you doing? Hancock demanded, watching in shock as Kronos's form continued to deteriorate. Exposing the truth, Blackbeard replied. Your helpful cosmic guide isn't what it seems. Ask yourself, who benefits most from Straw Hat surrendering these powers? Luffy, still locked in the ritual position, could only watch as the disruption caused the carefully controlled energy flows to waver dangerously. Hancock. The powers are destabilizing. The Pirate Empress hesitated, torn between defending Luffy and addressing this new revelation. What do you mean? What is Kronos really? As if in answer, Kronos's form collapsed further, revealing a darker entity beneath the opalescent exterior, a being of shifting shadows and ancient malevolence. I am what was before time, it admitted, its voice now deeper, older, filled with cold purpose. The void between realities. The hunger that consumes worlds. It's a parasite. Blackbeard's commander explained urgently. It feeds on dimensional energy, the exact energy being released by this ritual. Hancock's eyes widened in horrified understanding. The redistribution, it was never going to restore balance. The powers were being channeled directly to you. For consumption, the entity formerly known as Kronos. Confirmed without remorse. Such concentrated power, a feast unprecedented in eons. Luffy struggled against the ritual bindings, the powers within him surging chaotically as his emotional state destabilized. You tricked us. I merely offered what you desired most, a way to be rid of your burden. The dark entity began to grow, absorbing the energy already released into the crystal pillars. And now the feast begins in earnest. Blackbeard stepped forward, darkness swirling around his left hand while his right crackled with the power of earthquakes. Not so fast. These powers aren't for you to devour, they're mine to claim. What followed was chaos. Blackbeard launched a combined attack of darkness and seismic energy at the entity, while his commanders deployed more temporal disruption devices. The dark being retaliated with tendrils of pure void stuff that seemed to erase anything they touched from existence. Caught in the middle, Luffy remained bound by the ritual's energy connections, unable to break free without potentially causing a catastrophic release of power. Hancock fought desperately to protect him, her love abilities proving surprisingly effective against the void tendrils, which recoiled from the emotional energy of her attacks. Luffy, she called out between defensive moves. You must stop the ritual completely. Reclaim the powers already transferred. How? He shouted back, struggling against the energy bindings. The same way you harmonized them before. They respond to your will, your true will, not the ritual's directions. Understanding dawned in Luffy's eyes. He closed them, focusing not on releasing the powers as the ritual demanded, but on reconnecting with them as parts of himself. It was like reaching out to scattered pieces of his own spirit, calling them home. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Energy that had flowed into the crystal's reverse direction, streaming back into Luffy's body in torrents of color and force. The dark entity shrieked in fury as its feast was snatched away. No. The convergence power is mine. The being's form expanded explosively, dark tendrils lashing out in all directions. One caught Hancock across the midsection, sending her flying into a stone column with bone-crushing force. Hancock! Luffy's shout echoed through the chamber, his concentration momentarily broken by the sight of her crumpled form. That split second of emotional disturbance was all Blackbeard needed. Activating his strange chest device, he directed a beam of dark energy directly at Luffy, attempting to forcibly extract the Admiral powers now flooding back into the young captain's body. Zihahaha. 5 powers returning to one vessel, right before the convergence peak. Perfect timing, Straw Hat. Luffy screamed as the extraction beam connected, creating a visible tug-of-war between his body and Blackbeard's device. Colors stretched between them like taffy being pulled to breaking point. At that critical moment, the chamber doors burst open again. Zoro, Sanji, and Usopp charged in from one side while Robin led Vice Admiral Rance and his marines in from the other. The two forces, pirates and marines alike, froze momentarily at the incomprehensible scene before them. What the hell is happening? Zoro demanded, taking in the writhing dark entity, Blackbeard's extraction attempt, and Luffy's evident agony. The cosmic parasite deceived us. Hancock called out, struggling to her feet despite her injuries. The ritual was a trap. And now Blackbeard tries to steal the returning powers. Understanding the situation immediately, Zoro and Sanji launched themselves at Blackbeard, while Usopp provided covering fire against the commanders. Simultaneously, Robin used her powers to disrupt the extraction device, sprouting hands directly on Blackbeard's chest to tear at its components. The Marines, following Rance's lead, turned their specialized weapons against the dark entity, which howled in rage as the sea prism-infused projectiles disrupted its semi-physical form. The convergence peaks in moments, the entity roared. I will not be denied my feast. Indeed, through the temple dome, they could see the 5 sons of Temporal Isle now almost perfectly aligned, their combined light intensifying to blinding levels. In the midst of this chaos, Luffy continued his desperate struggle, fighting both Blackbeard's extraction attempt and the ritual's momentum, which still pulled at the Admiral powers even as he tried to reclaim them. His body fluctuated wildly between his natural state and various elemental transformations as his control slipped. Hancock fought her way to his side, blood streaming from a head wound. Luffy! Focus on me. Find your center. Their eyes met across the maelstrom of energy, and something passed between them, something beyond words or powers or cosmic forces. A connection, pure and true. Drawing on every lesson she had taught him about emotional control, Luffy took a deep breath and found his center. The chaotic fluctuations in his powers began to steady, his will reasserting itself against both Blackbeard's theft and the ritual's pull. The powers are mine, he stated with quiet certainty. Not to keep forever. Not to reshape reality. But right now, in this moment, they're mine. With that declaration, Luffy exerted his will with unprecedented force. The energy streams connecting him to both Blackbeard and the ritual crystals shattered simultaneously. The 5 Admiral powers rushed back into him all at once, but instead of chaotic collision, they merged in perfect harmony, his rubber body serving as the perfect conductor for their unified potential. Blackbeard stumbled backward as his extraction device overloaded, exploding in a shower of mechanical parts and ancient fragments. No. The prophecy is about me, not you, Luffy finished for him, rising to his feet as the full might of the harmonized powers flowed through him. His body glowed with all 5 colors simultaneously, not cycling now but perfectly blended into a new, prismatic energy that seemed both familiar and utterly unique. The dark entity, seeing its feast slipping away, made one final, desperate lunge toward Luffy, only to be intercepted by Hancock. The pirate empress threw herself between them, channeling every ounce of her Haki and devil fruit power into a protective barrier. "You will not have him," she declared, her body beginning to glow with the intensity of her effort. "Not his powers. Not his future. Not his heart. Hancock, don't." Luffy cried out, recognizing what she intended. "I believe in you, Luffy," she replied, a serene smile on her face despite her grievous injuries. "Use these powers as only you can, not to destroy or remake, but to protect what matters." Before he could stop her, Hancock unleashed the full potential of her love fruit, not as a weapon to turn enemies to stone, but as a shield of pure emotional energy that enveloped the dark entity. The being shrieked as love, the antithesis of its void nature, began to dissolve its form from the outside in. The cost was immediately apparent. Hancock's body started to crystallize, turning to stone from her extremities inward as she poured her very life force into the attack. "Hancock!" Luffy's anguished cry echoed through the chamber as he lunged toward her. At that exact moment, the 5 sons of Temporal Isle reached perfect alignment. Their combined light pierced the temple dome, striking the exact center of the ritual circle, where Luffy now stood, his body charged with the full power of 5 Admiral abilities in perfect harmony. Time seemed to stop. Reality itself held its breath. In that frozen instant, Luffy experienced something beyond normal perception, a vision, or perhaps a memory, of an ancient figure with a strikingly similar straw hat. Joy Boy, the legendary figure whose will had shaped history, stood before him in a place that was neither the temple nor any physical location. "You understand now," Joy Boy said, his voice echoing across centuries. "The power was never meant to reshape reality according to one person's will. It was meant to restore balance when chaos threatened to overwhelm the world. You had these powers too," Luffy realized. "During the last convergence." Joy Boy nodded. "And I faced the same choice you face now, to claim godhood or to restore balance. What did you choose?" The ancient figure smiled sadly. "I chose balance. But at great cost. The void century was the result, a time erased from history because reality itself fractured during the redistribution. I lacked what you possess." "What's that?" "Harmony. Your rubber nature allows the powers to blend rather than conflict. And your heart." Joy Boy's expression softened. "Your heart knows what truly matters." The vision faded as reality resumed its flow. Luffy found himself standing at the convergence point, the combined light of 5 aligned suns flowing through him. Hancock's body continued its transformation to stone, the dark entity continued to dissolve under her attack, and everyone else remained frozen in attitudes of battle or defense. In that moment of perfect clarity, Luffy knew exactly what to do. Reaching deep within himself, he activated all 5 Admiral powers simultaneously, but with a purpose entirely different from either the ritual or Blackbeard's extraction attempt. Instead of redirecting or transferring the powers, he harmonized them completely with his rubber abilities, creating a unified field of balanced energy that expanded outward from his body. The effect was beautiful and profound. Where the field touched Hancock, it halted her crystallization, drawing her back from the edge of sacrifice. Where it touched the dark entity, it neutralized its void nature, transforming it into pure light that dispersed harmlessly into the cosmos. When it reached Blackbeard, the Pirate Emperor found his darkness and quake abilities temporarily neutralized, not destroyed, but balanced, unable to cause harm while the field remained active. His commanders experienced similar effects, their temporal technologies rendered inert. The Marines, including Vice Admiral Rance, found their weapons similarly neutralized but themselves unharmed. The temple itself, damaged by battle and cosmic forces, began to repair, ancient stone flowing back into proper configuration as if time were reversing selectively just for the structure. "What is this?" Blackbeard demanded, staring at his powerless hands in disbelief. "Balance," Luffy replied simply. "What the convergence was always meant to create." As the harmonizing field expanded beyond the temple to encompass all of Temporal Isle, something extraordinary happened. The dimensional anomalies that had plagued the world began to stabilize. Weather patterns normalized. Barriers between realities strengthened. Within the chamber, Luffy's crew and allies watched in awe as their captain maintained the perfect equilibrium of forces, not by surrendering the powers as the false ritual had demanded, not by redistributing them to separate vessels as Blackbeard had attempted, but by harmonizing them within himself in a way that served life rather than domination. "He's not just containing the powers," Robin realized aloud. "He's transforming them, becoming a conduit for balance itself." Gradually, the light of the aligned suns began to fade as they moved past perfect conjunction. The moment of convergence passed, leaving in its wake not catastrophe but renewal. As the harmonizing field dissipated, Luffy slowly returned to his normal appearance, though those with keen observation could still see the 5 colors cycling subtly beneath his skin, now perfectly integrated with his natural rubber properties. "It's done," he said quietly, swaying slightly from exhaustion. Hancock, free from her stone transformation but still badly injured, reached out to steady him. "You did it. You found the true purpose of the convergence." Blackbeard, finding his powers restored but knowing himself outmatched, backed toward the exit with his commanders. "This isn't over, Straw Hat. The next convergence is 1,000 years away, but I'll find another way to claim what should be mine." "Get lost, Teach," Luffy replied without heat. "I'm too tired to kick your ass right now." With a final frustrated growl, Blackbeard retreated, his grand plan thwarted but his ambition undimmed. Vice Admiral Rance approached cautiously, his weapon lowered. "What happens now, Straw Hat? The world government still sees you as a threat." "They're not wrong," Luffy admitted with a tired grin. "I've always been a threat to their idea of justice." He straightened, looking the Marine directly in the eye. "But not to the world itself." "Never that." After a moment's consideration, Rance nodded. "I'll report what I've witnessed here. That you prevented catastrophe rather than causing it. It won't change your wanted status, but—" He glanced at his soldiers. "It might buy you some time." "We'll take it," Zoro said, stepping forward to support his exhausted captain. As the Marines withdrew to regroup, the Straw Hats gathered around Luffy and the injured Hancock. Chopper immediately began treating the Pirate Empress's wounds, while the others marveled at what they had witnessed. "So you're keeping the powers after all?" Nami asked, her tone somewhere between worried and impressed. Luffy nodded. "They're part of me now. Completely integrated. Removing them would—" He paused, considering. "Would be like removing part of who I am." "But you've changed how they work," Robin observed. "The balance you created, it's altered their fundamental nature." "Yeah." Luffy looked down at his hands, where the faintest shimmer of combined colors still played beneath his skin. "They're not just weapons anymore. They're— I don't know. Tools for maintaining balance, I guess." "Great," Sanji commented. Dryly. "Our captain, rubber idiot and cosmic balancing act." That broke the tension, sending the crew into much-needed laughter. As Temporal Isle began to stabilize, returning to its natural state as a nexus point between time streams, the Straw Hats prepared to depart. The Temple of Ages would remain, but without its parasitic guardian or the imminent threat of convergence. Hancock, supported by Luffy as they walked toward the Thousand Sunny, gazed thoughtfully at the transformed captain. "What will you do now?" she asked softly. "The world government won't stop hunting you. Blackbeard won't abandon his ambitions. And these powers, they make you something beyond what any of us has encountered before." Luffy's answer was characteristically simple. "Keep going. Find the One Piece." Become Pirate King. He grinned at her. Same dream as always. With significantly upgraded abilities, she noted with a small smile. Yeah, well. He shrugged. The path might be different, but the destination's the same. As they boarded the Sunny, Frankie engaged the engines while Nami calculated their return course through the dimensional gateway. The 5 sons of Temporal Isle began to set simultaneously, casting long shadows across the crystalline sea. Standing at the bow, Luffy gazed at the horizon, feeling the 5 Admiral powers flowing harmoniously within him, now permanently part of his being. The responsibilities that came with such power weighed on him, but didn't crush him, just as the straw hat he always wore reminded him of promises made and dreams yet to be fulfilled. Ready to go, Captain? Zoro asked, joining him at the railing. Luffy nodded, his eyes reflecting the combined light of 5 setting suns. Ready. As the 1,000 Sunny sailed into the dimensional gateway, returning to their own world with all its dangers and adventures, Luffy felt a profound sense of rightness. The powers had come to him for a reason, not to reshape reality, but to help protect it. Not to elevate him above others, but to connect him more deeply to everything that mattered. In the end, that's what balance truly meant, not the absence of power, but its proper application. Not godhood, but the wisdom to reject it. Not remaking the world, but preserving what made it worth fighting for. The Admiral powers were his now, and he was theirs, Monkey D., Luffy, Rubber Man, future Pirate King, and keeper of the balance that sustained the world he loved. And whatever came next, whatever enemies arose or challenges appeared, he would face them as he always had, with his crew beside him, his dream before him, and his own unique approach to the impossible. After all, that's what it meant to be truly free. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.